Welcome to Catskill Weiss Schwarz. In today's video, I am going to be doing a multi-deck overview. This is going to be essentially multiple deck profiles for Oshi No Ko decks that are coming out of the release of Volume 2. I was originally planning to make a whole bunch of individual deck profiles covering a variety of decks that you can now play with Volume 2 out for Oshi No Ko. I decided that I would sort of condense them into this one big video where I will be covering a whole bunch of different types of decks. I will, of course, be covering the big one, the Kana Akane Door Pants deck that is going to be played by a whole bunch of people for the foreseeable future, especially going into the next regional season. I will also be covering the 8 choice deck. That is a very, very, very good secondary option that I'm sure a lot of people would sort of stay on. But in addition to that, I'm going to be covering a whole bunch of other types of decks that aren't those two main decks. It's going to be covering a variety of characters, triggers, combos. It is not going to just be regurgitation of Akane and Kana. There will be plenty of cards that we're going to see a lot because they're just good cards, but I did want to make a whole bunch of different deck profiles that put a spotlight on a whole bunch of different combos, while the skeletons, the shell, if you will, of a lot of different decks will be sort of similar. The combos are going to be different between a lot of the profiles. And at the end of the video, I'm going to be talking about a couple of budget options for anyone who saw that Oshi No Ko was getting some trading cards. They're not familiar with Weiss Schwarz. They're not sure if they want to buy a whole bunch of expensive double rares from set 1 and set 2. Maybe they just want to get their feet wet a little bit, see how they feel about the game. So for those players who are just getting into Weiss and they don't want to drop big money on play sets or double rares, there will be a couple of very budget friendly options at the end. So without further ado, let's get into it. We are going to get the big deck out of the way. It is the one that everyone pretty much, or a lot of people, will be on for the foreseeable future, and there is a good reason for it. It is the Door Pants Kana Akane deck. This deck is a I'm not going to say it's a solved deck because it definitely isn't. Oshi has so many different options for tech choices. It is such a wide variety of level zeros you could be playing. There's lots of options at 1, 2, and 3 you could throw in and sort of take some things in, take some things out. So it's not a solve deck, but a lot of Oshi lists for this deck in particular are going to look very, very similar. And there is a reason for that because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It just works. I do feel like as much as I have loved testing this deck in the simulator, I haven't gotten to test it in person yet. The first time I'll get to test it in person is actually the day after recording this. Recording this on Friday, I get to go to my first locals with the deck on Saturday, so I'll get to see how it is in person. I'm very, very excited to play it. I'm looking forward to this set a ton. But for my testing in the simulator, the deck just is like butter. It's so smooth. It feels great. I have a couple of my own personal choices in there that I don't really see other people on. Nothing really too crazy or anything like that. Just some of it is just I like certain characters. I want to play more of it like I. But let's just talk about it. It really isn't anything crazy. As you can see, I think this is a mostly standard list. We've got the Aqua Ricky here. We've got 2 copies of the Akane level 0 Summoner. I am playing in my own personal list 2 copies of the Akane level 0 Rico that we see in the middle row all the way to the right. Most people do seem to be playing 4 copies of the level 1 Aqua that is also a Rico, and for anyone unfamiliar with the Rico effect, it's a term used to describe a character that on play is discard, reveal top card of deck, and salvage a level X or lower character. X is equal to the level of the revealed card. Most people are on that. That's 4 copies of the 1-0 blue Aqua from set 2 that does that. However, we are playing the level 1 Kana combo, which is on a door, which is red, and there were just too many games where I would be put to 0-6, and when I clock, I have to decide between red and blue, and I know the logic is that it shouldn't matter that you're a multicolored deck at level 1 because you have the Aqua Ricky, which can help fix your colors for you. But there were just too many games where I really would just get pushed to 0-5 before my turn, and then I clock to 6, and then I use the Aqua to get to level 1. Or I don't have the Aqua, and I have to clock to level 1 just during my clock phase, and I have to choose between red and blue, and I kind of don't like playing that way. I have zero problem with multicolored decks. I just don't like them to be too multicolored at level 1. And obviously the deck works perfectly fine if you want to play it that way. It tops a ton in Japan. Most people that are playing this version are probably going to be playing it that way. That's perfectly fine. This is just sort of a personal preference. All of these lists that I'm going to talk about in this video, they are more like guides than directions on telling you what to do. They're not, orders like you should need to build this if you want to win. Um, a lot of it might be good, but as individual players, you all might decide you want to just put your own little spin on it. You don't have to agree with every choice I make. That's perfectly fine. A great thing about having two really great sets between volumes 1 and 2 of Oshi is that you have access to a very large card pool. And there's a lot of really good cards. When you have access to such a large card pool, a lot of the time there are really great cards that people just don't play, not because they're not great, but because there's just no room in a deck, and sometimes you just gotta cut space somewhere, and it's really hard to do that. I've had to do it with plenty of sets. I think, thankfully, Oshi is a set like that. Between both of its volumes, there are plenty of great cards that don't see that much competitive play on the JP side of things just because they're good cards, but there's just other cards that might further certain agendas for the deck, that sort of thing. So, with that aside, we'll get back to this. But it is a very, very standard list. We are the main focus of this. We've got the level 3 Akane that everyone knows. It's on a pants climax. It gets 500 for each of your other characters. When you have the pants climax and she attacks, you could pay one, ditch one, as long as you have 5 of those cards in hand. If you do, you perform the following action 3 times. Mill the bottom card of your opponent's deck. If it is a level 0 card, not just a climax or a character, a level 0 card, burn 1 and heal 1. This is incredibly efficient for what it does, being able to deal potentially burn 1 up to 3 times off of such a cheap cost is really, really strong. Being on a pants climax is great. On the right, we have the Aquarium Date Kana. She is the level 1 climax combo of the deck. She works on a door. During your turn, if you have 3 or more other characters, she gets 2500 power, so she is swinging pretty big with the climax. When she attacks, if you have the door climax plus 3 or more other characters, you can look at up to 4 cards from the top of your deck. Pick a character, add it to hand, and if you added a level 2 or higher character, you could then look at the top 3 cards of your deck and put them in any order that you would like. This is a fantastic combo. It gives deck speed, which Oshi was lacking a little bit with set 1. This helps fix that. This also helps you set up cancels. It helps you set up triggers. For the Kana trigger, you could set up whatever trigger you want out of those 3. It also helps set up the triggers on whatever characters you still have to attack with that turn. But if this is the last character you attack with, you can help keep a climax out of your stock if you want and cancel with the next turn. If you really need to trigger a specific climax that you see off those top 3, you can then move it up to the front and you could trigger with it and get the benefit of triggering that climax. Very importantly, you can help set up a level 2 or higher card from the top of your deck, which is really important because we have this brainstorm in the middle that says all your other character in the middle position of your center stage gets the following ability, which is at the beginning of your opponent's draw phase, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's level 2 or higher, you may return this card to your hand. This is just absolutely phenomenal when it's tied to a brainstorm, which this is. It is a pay 1, rest itself, mill 5 cards. Most brainstorms, for anyone unfamiliar, most brainstorms are simple mill 4. This mills 5, and then for every climax, you get to salvage a character. The only caveat is that it only hits on two specific climaxes, the Akane level 3 climax combo and the Kana level 1 climax combo. But that is a small price to pay for what this card does. The Kana on the right, you put her in the middle, at least one copy of her in the middle. You use her effect, you add a level 2, you see the top 3 cards of your deck, you rearrange them, you are able to set up a cancel, you set up a level 2 so that when you get to your opponent's draw phase, you reveal level 2 and then you bounce the character back to hand. Really, really strong. This whole package just feels really, really great. It just works really well. It may not be as explosive as the Kana level 3 from set 1 as that combo, but overall I would say the deck is more consistent. The Mill 5 Brainstorm is just beautiful. As you can see from this list, we are playing 3 copies of the Changer Akane. That is the one at the top in between the Trial Deck Aqua and the red 2-1 Akane. She just says, for anyone unfamiliar, again, most people will know what this does by now. You can on play draw a card, and when you play the climax, you can swap her out with the level 3 combo in your waiting room. You give it some power, you give it the ability that your opponent can't use events during its battle. Just really, really great. The rest of this list is pretty standard, I would say. There are a couple of slots for wiggle room, particularly with the level 2s. We do have multiple level 2 options that do come in and out of play. Right now, a lot of people are not on the stock shuffle, which is the 2-1 Akane at the top. So that is sort of taking up one of the slots that would normally go to one of the other 2-1 blue Akanes that a lot of people play, or maybe even a second copy of the 2-1 red guy in the middle, Melt, who is really, really great also on play. You look at up to 4 at a climax if you see one ditch. He also is absolutely monstrous. He gets really, really big if he's in the middle slot. I like having the stock shuffle. I think it is not something you're going to use most games, but it's important to have some type of decompression tool. I don't want to go up against Bane Dream, which is still going to be relevant after the ban list we just had. I don't want to go up against Bane Dream and they're playing the level 1 Oblivionis and they just stock as many zeros as possible off of the level 1 Oblivionis. If they do that, I want to be able to get them out of their stock and back into their deck and hopefully keep some of them in their deck so that my Akanes don't whiff. I don't want to lose against something like Tokyo Revengers at a regional simply because they're playing dual laners, and for anyone familiar, it basically allows them to just stock like 4 characters, selectively stock 4 characters from their waiting room per turn, build a monstrous amount of stock. The cost of that is that you only can attack like twice that turn, but I don't want them loading up their stock with a whole bunch of zeros and then my finisher does nothing. I do like to just have the option. It mostly only matters against those 2 decks. There's not a ton else out there that is able to really stock that many zeros specifically, as well as those 2 decks, but Bane Dream is still going to be very relevant, so I do like having that option. I am also playing the 3-1 Kana Bouncer at the top left. I know some people don't play any sort of removal, or they might play the 3-2 Aqua Double D-Leveler, which is a perfectly valid choice. I like the Kana. I like that it bounces. Sometimes if your opponent doesn't leave you a waiting room, the D-Leveler is useless. You wouldn't be able to use it. The Kana is also very efficient, being only 1 stock. Even with the Akane Summoner, you do spend a lot of stock in this deck, so I like just being able to get a double removal option with only a single stock. We don't play a ton of yellow. We only play 3 other yellows, as you can see in this, but it should be pretty easy to do it. We have the Aqua Ricky that sets up our clock. I am also playing 2 copies of the I Ricky from set 1, which also selectively puts cards into your clock. Most people are not on this. This slot would go to something else. I do really like this I Ricky. I only played in 2 copies. First, she is my favorite character, so there might be some bias, but I really like how selective she is. I like that she grabs any character. I also like that she goes to memory. A lot of people are probably, instead of this, would be playing the Aqua JC, which is a perfectly good option. I do love that card, and I do want to fit a couple of copies of it into this list, but I just really like the selectiveness of the eye Ricky. I like that I can go first and just throw out a good zero that will do something afterwards. I'll see how it tests in real life, but so far in the simulator, it's worked really well. You probably won't see that a ton, but I think most of the rest of this list, probably like 45 of the cards in this list outside of that eye are going to be very standard. You're going to see a lot of that. I would say the eye Ricky and the Akane level 0 Rico are the ones where you're going to see the most difference across most lists. But like I said earlier, there's so many good options in Oshi, it really doesn't matter. These are more personal preferences. These are just guides, and just gave a little bit of my reason as to why I like them. It's overall, no matter what you pick for your level 0 lineup, as long as you've got most of these zeros in there, I think this list is going to perform phenomenally well. It is just so strong. It is just devastating. The Akane is just such a devastating finisher when it hits, and it's so easy for it to hit. Most decks have a hard time playing around it outside of just leveling as many zeros as they can. But being able to heal up to 6 times in a turn, up to 9 times in a turn, I mean, is just really, really nuts. Um, Also, forgot to mention, I am playing the Aqua Fumio, the 3/2 at the top from the trial deck. Some people play it, some people don't. I do like decompression. A Fumio is something I probably use maybe 2 out of every 10 games, I would say, when I am playing a set that has a Fumio. Sometimes it is maybe 1 out of every 10, but it's something that I do like to have. It is a very cheap Fumio because this Fumio also summons something on play, and its Fumio cost is just pay one, ditch one. So essentially, it is a pay one, ditch one Fumio, which is actually very cheap. It's pay one, ditch two, essentially, if you count the Fumio itself. But again, that is very cheap. It's in a good color for the set. There is so much to like about this list. We got the 2-1 backup that everyone plays, which is a -1 soul backup. Just so many good tech options in this. So many tech options that I'm not using here, but I'm going to be testing that other people are already playing or will be testing. Just a lot of good stuff. And there's not really much more to say because the deck, if you play against it or you play it, it just speaks for itself how good it is. Will be the first in a series of decks we're going to talk about that all revolve around choice climaxes. This first one is going to be very familiar to anyone that's been around since Oshi Set 1 was a thing, and who maybe played it themselves. It is the very popular 3-choice climax split lineup. Most decks, for anyone unfamiliar with Weiss, they'll typically only have 2 different climax combos in them. The most standard will be a climax combo at level 1 and then a climax combo at level 3. Oshi Set 1 had 3 very, very good choice combos in it. One was at level 1, one was at level 2, and one was at level 3. So a very popular thing to do was to do a 3 climax split. You would still be a choice, but you would have your level 1 choice climax combo, your level 2, and your level 3. Each one sort of fed into the next level. They all had a lot of synergy. What the climax combos do is we'll start with the middle, the 1/0 moment she fell in love Kana. During your turn, she gets 3,000 power, and when she attacks, if you have the choice climax, her specific choice climax, and you have experience 2 or higher, which means that if the total level of the cards in your level is 2 or higher, then you mill the top 2 cards of your deck, salvage level X or lower, X is equal to the total level of the milled cards. Then, if the total level of the milled cards is 2 or higher, you may discard a card and then salvage any character from your waiting room. She was highly selective. Being in a deck that requires a lot of experience meant you were playing a lot of level 2s and 3s, which meant you were very often hitting on the mills. So sometimes you could just mill some climaxes or a climax and a 0 or just a couple of 0 characters. But a lot of the time you would be able to meet that 2 or higher threshold, and then you could basically dump whatever crap character or extra climax that was in your hand and grab whatever you wanted. It could be 0, it could be higher. Just because you milled level 2 or higher doesn't mean you actually had to grab that. You could still get the additional optional mill even if you only grabbed a 0 for whatever reason. That is perfectly fine. It was the go-to level 1 climax combo of choice with set 1, and it still remains a very powerful and very versatile level 1 climax combo now with set 2 out. It's still definitely, in my opinion, even though we have another level 1 choice combo out now, this is still the better of the two. A lot of people, I think, that they're playing a choice, they'll just stick with this. It's sort of like all reliable. It is a very good combo. There's a reason why it saw so much play with set 1. Even if Oshi had some weaknesses with set 1, this combo just was very, very good, even by those standards, and it holds up really well. Next, we have the 2-1 Memcho combo that's on the right. She gets 1,000 power for each of your other characters. So if you have a full board, she's 10k, 11k with the climax. And when you play her choice climax, you get to salvage a character, and then she gets the ability until end of turn, where up to once per turn, when the damage she deals is canceled, you may stock any 2 characters from your waiting room, put them into your stock. This was a great way to stock charge yourself like crazy. It was very popular. It's still very good. It's just a very strong combo. It's still adding you back characters to your hand. So hopefully the most ideal thing would be that by the time you get to level 2, you hadn't refreshed yet. So you have a big fat waiting room full of characters you want to add back to hand, plus full of characters that you just want to stock. Really strong. Even though she only gets the stocking ability by your opponent canceling, she generates you so much advantage that you really don't mind it if your opponent does cancel. This is a card that if the game is going bad for you and you're low on resources, depending on if your opponent cancels or not, she could totally turn the game around for you. And whereas before you might have been bleeding stock, now you have more stock than you know what to do with. Plus, she is sitting really, really big with a full board. Her power is cross turn. So a lot of the time, your opponent's going to have to crash into at least a couple copies of her if you tri-fielded her. And that leaves direct lanes, which is very important because our level 3 combo really, really wants your opponent to cancel. And having direct lanes makes it more likely that they are going to cancel. Our level 3 combo is the Bikomachi Kana Arima. On play, she heals, and on attack, if you have experience 6 or higher, you can pay 1. If you do, she gets the following ability until end of turn. When the damage that she deals is canceled, mill the bottom 3 cards of your opponent's deck, and for every level 0 card, burn 2. Climaxes are considered level 0 cards, by the way. This combo is so absolutely insane. It is just, its ability to close out games is not unparalleled, but because we do have other very, very powerful combos in the game. But I would say this Kana, just on her own, looked at in a vacuum, is one of the most powerful level 3 combos that we have in English. She does have the downside that she does require a cancel to get her additional burns. But to be fair, if your opponent just eats a lot of damage, that is still pretty good too. It's not like it's the worst thing if they don't cancel, because it meant that they did just take some damage. A big weakness of hers though is that she is very susceptible to money counter and to any sort of like neg soul backup or event. So if she can't deal damage from a money counter, well then she's basically useless. All you do is pay 2 stock to heal, which does stink. Fortunately, the set does have options to help mitigate that. Aside from the 2-1 Memcho here, which as discussed makes it very easy to force your opponent to crash, and then you just have wide open lanes to attack in, which not only means you don't have to worry about backups because your opponent can't play a backup when you attack directly, but also when you attack directly you get an extra soul, which means that your Kana is swinging even bigger for more soul, and she's more likely to cancel to trigger her effect. And if they don't cancel, well, at that point they just ate at least 4, which is really, really strong. But a very important way to help deal with any problems on board or to help just swing direct, we are still playing the 3-2 Kana double bouncer here. We also have the a very standard lineup, I would say, for level 3s. We do have to meet a certain experience requirements. We have a lot of level 3s in this deck. We got the 3-2 Memcho at the top. That's an early play healer or allows you to dig. There's also the new 3-2 Kana at the top, which is if your opponent has a level 3 character, you can early play her, and she gets massively big, and she heals, and is a very, very good card. We have the 3-2 Aqua Ruby that's up on the top row at the middle. That is just a 4 or more early play healer that also can bounce back to hand when it gets a reverse. Very strong card. These are all pretty standard cards you see in a lot of 8 choice lists. Not really reinventing the wheel with this. I am in this version playing 2 copies of the first stage event. That event, for anyone unfamiliar, is a 3-0 event that has one of 3 effects. You can send it to stock and you give something 4k power for the turn. You could search your deck for a climax, or you can give something the ability, or you pay an additional, I forgot if it's 3 or 4 stock, it's one or the other, whatever it is, 3 or 4 stock, and you give a character the ability that on attack burn 3. It's a very, very versatile card. It has no bonder, unfortunately, so you do have to hard draw it. But a lot of people playing 8 choice will play 3 to 4 copies of it. I'm not as nuts about it as other people are, but I do understand the value. I think the biggest thing that this event does for the deck is we are on the 3 climax split, which means that getting to your specific level 3 climax can be difficult at times. Because we are only playing 2 copies of it. As you can see with our climaxes at the bottom, we're playing 4 copies of the level 1 combo climax, and we are playing 2 copies each of the level 2 Memcho combo and the level 3 Kana combo. A lot of people, well, maybe not a lot, there are a good number of people though that they prefer a 4-3-1 split, so 4 level 1s, 3 level 2s, and 1 level 3. I don't like to live on the edge like that. I can handle a little bit of danger, but personally, that is just, I've tested this a million times with 4 copies of the event. Sometimes it just gets buried in stock, it just gets buried in clock, it just gets somewhere, and the game just doesn't work out, and now you can't do anything at level 3 because you just don't have access to your level 3 climax, which is really disappointing and feels really bad, especially when you're all set up for level 3. So I prefer a 4-2-2 split. Some people like that, some people don't. It's perfectly fine. Most of the rest of the list is pretty standard. We got the 3 Ruby Brainstorms, which has the potential to give extra soul and power when you play a climax. Very standard list. We are still on the Akane level 0 summoner like we were with the Kana Akane deck we just looked at. This card continues to be very powerful in decks outside of the Akane deck. Being able to just play out your level 3 combo for free when your level 3 combo doesn't require any hand whatsoever is really, really strong. Being able to do that frees up hand and stock to spend on other things like the double bouncer or a brainstorm or whatever it might be, or stock shuffle. In this list, I did take out the Fumio. I do like the Fumio, but when we've got so much going on, we don't have enough blue, we really need to be just focusing. We have to make sure that we are just leveling a lot of level 3 yellows, and most of the time we'll level 1 level 3 red. It just, when I've tested it in the 3 choice climax split lineup specifically, it was just too much to worry about, and so I took it out to make room for things that most likely I'm just planning to level. But I think this 8 choice list or versions of it are going to be very popular going forward. The Kana combo, the level 3, still remains incredibly strong. I stand by that. I think that it is stronger than the Akane combo when you just look at both of them in a vacuum. The reason why the Akane, I think, has more representation on the JP side of things is that the whole package surrounding it is honestly a better package than the 8 choice list. 8 choice is perfectly fine whether you do a climax split or not, but it just is so good. It does so much that is why I think more people play it. But if you're just comparing the sheer finishing power of the 2 finishers, I have to give it to this Kana. I've said it before when I talked about my set overview for anyone to watch that. The first time I went up against the Kana level 3 combo was on release weekend for Oshi Volume 1. I was like 2-1 with Ruby, and my opponent only got 2 copies of their Kana out. And by the end of the turn, those two Kanas had gotten me to 3-5 or 3-6. It can whiff like anything else, any other finisher in the world. It can whiff. Maybe you don't hit too many zeros or none at all, whatever it is. But so can the Akane. The Akane also needs to hit on level zeros. The Akane does allow you to heal down from 3-6 to 3-0, which is nice. The Kana, though, she's not interested in healing you. She just wants to kill your opponent. Both finishers are very, very strong in their own ways, and they have a lot of stuff backing them up. I have played the 8 choice list, a version of this list, many, many times. It is the Memcho is very strong. The level 2 combo is very strong. The deck works really well. It works even better now that we have the set 2 stuff. We still have the stockless Climax Swapper, which is really strong. The Kana level 1 just remains incredibly selective, really helps get you set up for your level 2 Memcho combos. I really do enjoy this list. I do enjoy just the deck overall. There are plenty of things like with every other deck on here that you can swap things out and change the ratios and all that. But very solid list overall. Very fun deck. The Kana is just something that feels so dangerous when you're sitting across from it. Last weekend at locals, my opponent they had gotten the new stuff and they had their Kana deck ready, and I pulled out my best deck, which is Bane Dream, and I felt I needed my best deck because I am just so terrified of this finisher. The last time I played against this person, I was playing. It was a few months ago. It wasn't even set 2 stuff was out. It wasn't even out yet, and I was playing Itsuki Quince, and I just felt so safe, and I was like literally 2-2, I think, and I died from triple Kana from 2-2. It was just absolutely brutal. There was nothing I could really do to stop it. I was all set up for my level 3 turn, but Kana just has that ability to close out games. She has so much going for her. Weaknesses of this deck, I would say, are a weakness that a lot of 8 choice builds have. Is that there aren't a lot of soul triggers, ironically, which is weird because choice needs soul triggers, but there just aren't a ton compared to certain other lists. The other downside is that the 2-1 Memcho is a very strong card. It's very, very powerful. It's a great combo. I do really love it. The issue, though, is that it is level 2, and that makes it really easy for your opponent to side you. If your opponent knows that they can't get you, they don't want to push you to level 3 because they know they probably won't survive if they push you to level 3, they can just side the Memchos, and it's really easy to be siding for 0. And so your opponent could still be building stock. Maybe they just need that little extra stock for their finisher turn. You can use some of that stock that you got off the Memchos to start rickying yourself to get yourself to level 3. But there's only so many times you could do that. Maybe you don't have access to your Ricky. Maybe you don't have other copies of your Ricky in your deck. Maybe they're in your waiting room. Maybe they're buried in your stock. Whatever the situation might be. Sometimes you just won't be in a position where you can Ricky to a Ricky to a Ricky to level yourself up as many times as you need to get to level 3. And being level 2 does just make it really easy. Your opponent can just toss out 3 level 0s. Don't put a climax behind them. And even if they trigger, they're still siding for 0. And then at that point, you're not getting pushed to level 3 if you're the Kana player. Your opponent's not leaving you direct lanes because they sided. So that is a weakness of it. I do think the strengths outweigh the weaknesses for sure. And just overall, very, very strong. I think if I had to put hard numbers on it going into like the next regional season, I would say that the Akane Kana deck that we looked at the beginning, that's probably going to be like 75, maybe higher percentage of the representation of Oshi decks that are at regionals, I would expect whatever's left over to be some version of a choice. There's a lot of people that like Kana. She's still a very popular character from the show, and the finisher really is just that good, where even if the rest of the deck doesn't feel as smooth, just the finisher makes up for it in spades. It really, until you sat across from it and died from a really low point, from like a point you should not have died from if it was any other finisher, you won't understand fully how powerful the Kana can be, despite some of the minor weaknesses that the deck may still have, despite how good set 2 was and how many of those problems are fixed by set 2. We are going to continue with an 8 choice variant. This, however, will just be pure Kana. It is not going to include the Memcho 2-1. I am not going to spend too much time going over it because most of it is the same. We really just took out the 2-1 Memcho, which freed up 4 slots essentially, to allow us to put in other things. I think after set 2, there are a lot of pros to the 2-1 Memcho combo from the previous deck. There are also some cons that we discussed. I think after set 2, there is enough good stuff in set 2 to make playing just a normal 2 climax split 8 choice Oshi variant very, very viable. The double bouncer puts in a lot of the work that the Memcho does. The Memcho can stock build you like crazy, which can help get you very compressed, which can be somewhat helpful if you're stocking a bunch of zeros in the mirror match or against Akane Oshi. But again, there are some weaknesses. I think the double bouncer in a pure Kana version of H choice, it does free up 2 lanes, which is a big part of what Memcho did to help ensure the cancels off the Kana. One difference with this list is I am playing a copy of the 2-1 Aqua in the middle row left there. He is just an assist, so he pumps some power, and when a specific character attacks, it also gives some power. His big effect, though, and the real reason why I'm playing him, is that he gives the level 3 Kana combo. He gives that, if it's in the middle position of your center stage, the ability that when it attacks, you can look at the top card of your opponent's deck and you could leave it there or put it to the bottom. Sometimes you'll snipe a climax off of it, which is nice. But the idea is that if you see a 0, you put it on the bottom of your opponent's deck, whether it's a climax or a character. That way, as long as you cancel with that Kana, you're just sort of putting burn 2 down there, which is really, really strong. Most of the rest of this list, though, is pretty similar to what we just looked at. And again, there is a lot of room here for variation when it comes to throwing in different tech cards and things like that. Like I added the Fumio in now that I took out one of the Memchos. Not having to sculpt for the Memchos just felt like it was a bit easier to add that back in. Most of it's still the same, though. Any variation of this will still work. I don't think there's anything wrong. I think this list is a little bit easier if you're a newer player and you really love Kana, which is perfectly valid, despite the fact that she's third best girl. I think that you should maybe not get started on the 3 choice split that we just looked at. Maybe you should just stick with this normal 4 and 4 climax split. It's just a bit easier to play. It's less sculpting. You don't have to keep track of things as much as you have to with the other list. It's just a little bit easier all around. So if you are newer, maybe start here. Spend some time with the deck, spend some time learning just how Weiss works and that sort of thing, and then you could work your way up to the Memcho inclusion and see how it works for you. But this is very similar. The end game is still the same. You just have some different pieces now that you could play with because you freed up some slots by taking out the Memchos. Just very, very solid. And I personally do enjoy playing without. I love the Memcho. I do kind of hate having to always be keeping track of where my level 3 climaxes are, though. Are they in my deck? Did I bury it in stock? Is it in my waiting room? I kind of just don't enjoy having to be worrying about that as soon as as soon as the game starts, which is something I find myself constantly doing when I'm doing the 3 choice split. This version is kind of just a lot easier. It allows me to focus on other things like my opponent's deck state, how many climaxes are they triggering, how many of them are they paying out. I'm sure there's plenty of other players that have an easier time keeping track of all sorts of things than I do. I can't focus on that many things at once. I can't focus on my own deck state perfectly, as well as my opponent's deck state and what they're triggering and what resources they're missing out on and all that sort of thing. I would rather focus more attention on my opponent's deck state and that sort of thing than being forced to focus on my own just so that I don't lose out at level 3 because I'm not sure where my level 3 climax is. And playing a straight, normal, just two different climaxes lineup just allows me to sort of do that. So for anyone that doesn't want to play the Memcho or play a 3 climax split, this is sort of just a standard list. As you may have noticed from this is now the third deck that we've looked at. A lot of the zeros are very similar, and there probably is a good reason for that. The level 0 I that we've had 4 copies of in every list, I expect that will be 4 copies in most Oshi lists that you'll probably see. She's a level 0 reverser. She's also, when she hits waiting room, discard a card, look at top 4, add a level 1 or higher card, not character, card. And she can also pick a copy of herself in the waiting room and send her to memory for free. There's a reason why it sees play, usually in 4 copies, sometimes 3 copies, but definitely some copies. In pretty much every Oshi list, it is just a ridiculously good zero. Free memory compression. It's great in the mirror because you're getting zeros out of your deck. Super, super strong. Really like it a lot. But the rest of this deck, there's not really much to talk about. Not to say that it's bad or anything like that, but we've already pretty much discussed it with the previous. This is just a slight variation of it. Still ridiculously strong. And again, it is my personal preference to play this over the Memcho. If I could figure out a good, consistent deck that was 4 of the Memcho level 2 combo and 4 of the level 3 Kana, and just have something else going on at level 1 that still enabled me to get the pieces I need for level 2 and 3, I'd probably be on that just because of how powerful that level 2 Memcho is and because I do really like it. But until I sit down and really cook with that, pretty much this is what I'm going to be working with when I play 8 choice. But very, very solid overall. And just like that, we have another 8 choice Oshi list. However, finally, we are not going to be talking about the Kana level 3 combo at least, because we are still playing the level 1 Kana choice combo. There's probably a reason for that because it is just a very, very good combo. However, instead, in this list, we are going to be looking at the brand new level 3 Ruby choice combo from set 2. So we will take a look back at the whole deck list in a moment, but first, just wanted to talk about the new level 3 combo. Again, she is from Oshi set 2. She's on a choice. When you play her out, you draw up to 2 cards, then discard. And when she attacks, if you have the choice climax and you have experience 6 or higher in your level, you may discard 2 cards. If you do, burn 2. If that damage is canceled, you may burn an additional 2. This is a very, very good, solid, reliable alternative choice combo to the Kana combo. There are plenty of people that don't like the Kana combo, the level 3 Kana, that much because they're not a fan of climax combos that require your opponent to cancel in order to get their extra burns in. They're not a fan of just I mean, that's probably the biggest thing going against it, but they're also not a fan of the fact that it is susceptible to things like money counter or neg souls, even if it's sort of easy in the deck to circumvent those things. So I have seen plenty of people talking about switching to this Ruby, or who have already switched. There's also plenty of people who think the Kana that we've looked at a lot already and this combo are both really, really good combos. I am in the camp that they are both really, really good combos, and it's not a matter of one being better than the other. It comes down to personal preference, but also comes down to resource management and play style and how you like to play the game and what you're looking for out of a finisher. The Kana is very good at just getting a whole bunch of instances of burn 2, which is really, really great, but it does have some weaknesses. This Ruby still pushes 2 a lot. It can't push burn 2 as many times, but it does also not have those same types of weaknesses. Whereas the Akana is completely useless if your opponent money counters her. Even if your opponent money counters this Ruby, at the very least you will still burn 2 and then burn an additional 2 if that burn 2 is canceled. This combo is something I am looking forward to testing in person very much. I've tested it a lot in the simulator. It works really, really well. It's really cheap. Even though it's a ditch 2, you are adding an additional card to hand on play, so you are digging for what you need. You're not losing hand by playing her out. You're maintaining your hand size, but you're digging for the climax that you might need. You're digging for additional copies of her. Maybe you're digging for the double bouncer if you need it, or whatever key piece you might need. Maybe you just need a little bit of deck speed. She does not heal on play, which sometimes can be bad, sure. But you are an 8 choice, and we do have multiple heal options. So considering the fact that the level 3 Ruby combo doesn't require any stock at all to actually use the climax combo, it does mean that since we're an 8 choice, we can be a little more liberal with how we use our stock throughout the course of the game. We are still playing 3 different early play healers. They're the same as the other ones we've looked at, so no need to go into them again. But if you don't want to spend your stock on healing, you could spend it on brainstorming. You can spend it. We are playing 3 copies of the first stage 3-0 event that we discussed earlier. I think I like using that event in this deck more than I like using it in the Kana build, because I like that I can draw into it with the Ruby, and then if I have enough stock, I can get the extra burn. If I don't have enough stock, I can still search my climax. And if I don't have enough stock to do the extra burn, I can still just put this into stock after drawing it off of the Ruby and giving something 4k power. This list is very, very, very reliable. It pushes 2 like crazy. I will say the only thing I don't like about the Ruby combo that's pictured here is it doesn't feel good when they just eat the first burn 2. It really doesn't. At that point, you just did a ditch 2 to burn 2. What you really want to be happening with this Ruby is just taking out as many climaxes as possible from their deck. Hopefully they cancel the first burn 2, you stick the next, you stick the swing, or maybe they cancel both burn 2s and then you still stick the swing. The point is that unless your opponent is ridiculously compressed and has a whole bunch of climaxes in their deck, this is a really good way to push 2. And you're just processing through a lot of cards of your opponent's deck, unless you get really unlucky and they just don't cancel any of the burn 2s, which can happen. I have played this variation of this climax combo in Makeen, and sometimes it just happens. It doesn't feel great. It does feel good knowing that you don't have to spend any stock to do it, so you only need 6 stock, which is really, really reasonable in 8 choice. If you can't get to 6 stock in 8 choice by level 3 when you are playing an event that just sends itself to stock, I don't know, you had a really rough game, or maybe you gotta get tutored in how to play or something, I don't know. But we still have access to the big suite of tech options that we have seen in a lot of the other deck profiles today. There's a reason why I like using a lot of them. It's never a bad thing to have a Fumio or a stock shuffler or an anti-change backup, or the 3-2 Ruby that salvages your climax. The level 0 lineup again remains largely untouched, though I did add in 1 copy of the Kana Aqua Riki there. Again, the level 0 lineup is very, very open. Aside from the Aqua Riki and the I level 0 bomb and the Brainstorm, I think you have basically, you can add in whatever zeros you feel like playing. I think those are the only ones you really should be playing in most Oshi lists, but definitely this type of Oshi list. Just a very strong lineup of zeros between Oshi set 1 and 2. This is a really good deck overall. I would not be surprised to see this do very well at a local level. I can see people doing well with it at a regional because of how consistent it is and how affordable it is, and just it's super easy to do triple combo. I did take out the Akane Summoner at level 0 in this because it does require 2 hand, and while the discard 2 off the Ruby combo isn't as big as it sounds because it is replenishing itself. Sometimes you're not going to go into your final turn with a full hand, and you just can't afford to do that. Um, if you want to throw in a copy of it, it would make it easier to get the extra burns, to get the extra burn effect off of the 3-0 event. And maybe you are high rolling and you're going into your final turn with a full hand, then it is more feasible to do it, for sure. So it wouldn't be wrong to play that. I sort of added in the Kana Aqua Riki instead of that Akane Summoner, but you could swap those two out, and I think, like, depending on how the game goes and you're a good enough player, you would know, okay, I can feasibly still do triple combo and use the Akane Summoner and do the event to give extra burn. At that point, if you're not winning the game off of all of that, then you're just really unlucky because that is a fantastic way to close out a game. Even just triple Ruby is a fantastic way to play your level 3 game. Very, very fun. Ruby is a character, not that really matters, but she's a character that I really enjoyed starting in season 2. Didn't care as much about her in season 1. And I loved her by the end of season 3. So I really like that there is now a really good option for her character specifically to have a level 3 combo. There was one previously, but it's not as good. I have had plenty of talks with people at locals who are seriously excited to be playing this over the Kana. I don't think it's limited to just my locals. I think there's going to be a lot of people that maybe they just want to change or whatever, and this Ruby is pretty much all you could ask for. I can't imagine any way they really could have made it better outside of maybe giving it some sort of like backup or event protection. But aside from that, it's basically just a really solid level 3 combo, really good double rare slot, and yeah, that's about it. I will say we have only looked at the level 1 Kana combos so far when it comes to level 1 choice combos. I think this Memcho, which is new in Oshi Volume 2, she is also on a choice, and she's on attack if you have experience 2, and you have the choice climax, which is the same starting condition as the Kana level 1 choice combo. You may discard a card. If you do, look at up to 3 cards on the top of deck, add up to 3 characters. I think this is a perfectly viable alternative in any of the lists that we have discussed. There is no card in any of the choice lists that we looked at today that is Kana specific to the level 1 Kana, or even Kanas in general outside of the 2-1 Aqua that only works with the level 3 Kana. So there really is no downside to playing this. There's no upside to playing the Kana over this. I think this is a personal preference thing. This does process an extra card. It does make it easier to refill your hand. This card also does whiff on events, so that is something to keep in mind. There's no plus hand size, but I don't think that's really much of an issue. I think this is a perfectly fine, viable alternative to if you are just sick and tired of playing the level 1 Kana, or you're looking for a little more deck speed, or you just like Memcho, or some other reason. I think any of the reasons I said or some other reason are perfectly valid in wanting to maybe try out this Memcho. I do personally like this profile a lot. I don't think the experience too matters. People are already used to doing that with the Kana, and it just helps fill up your hand, which means you spend less stock replenishing cards to your hand the following turn. Even if it's not the most selective thing ever, I have played this profile enough times in enough different sets to know that it's a very strong profile, even without the benefit of a card that gives you plus hand size. Just really, really good. Next up, we are going to be looking at an 8-door list. From here on out, we are going to be covering decks that are not going to be as powerful at the top as the Akane or the Kana finishers, or even the Ruby finisher that we just looked at, which is still a very powerful level 3 combo. The overall ceiling is going to be lower on the decks that we're going to be looking at going forward. However, that does not mean in any way that they are not good decks and not worth playing. There are various reasons why someone might want to pick up any of the decks we're going to look at going forward. I have tested them all in the simulator, some more than others, but I have tested them all. I own the cards for all of them, and I'm very much looking forward to getting to play them more in person now that set 2 is out. And I can tell you from just playing the simulator, they are all very, very consistent decks that do what they set out to do well. They can absolutely win against the top of the meta, which going forward is probably going to be the Kana Akane deck and Bane Dream. It's my opinion. I have played myself enough times where with these decks that we're about to look at and won against my own Bane Dream deck or the Kana Akane. At Weiss is a game where, luckily, unlike certain other games, you don't necessarily have to be playing the absolute strongest deck in the room in order to have a fighting chance. Player skill comes into it, a little bit of luck comes into it, resource management comes into it. So that is just a long-winded preamble to say that just because we are not looking at the Akane level 3 finisher or the Kana level 3 finisher or even the Ruby level 3 finisher from set 2 does not mean these decks are not doesn't mean they don't have value in their own right. They are a lot of fun, I could tell you that much. If you're not a fan of the show at all and you just want something powerful, you're probably not going to really need to watch these profiles too much. But if you are a fan of the show, I think there's absolutely good reasons why you would want to be looking at and potentially playing any of the decks we're about to look at going forward. So first up will be one of a couple of different 8-door variants that we're going to look at. The first one is going to be this variant where we use the level 3 Ruby combo from set 1. Now, this one is using the Kana from Volume 2, the Kana level 1 combo. That is also on a door. It's a very, very, very strong combo and it's very versatile. You don't have to use it with the Akane. If you're not using it with the Akane, you do lose out on the Brainstorm. I mean, you could still play the Brainstorm if you want, but it'd be kind of stupid to do that. So we are just on the normal Salvage Ruby Brainstorm. I think the Kana is still very, very strong even without that Brainstorm. And I think this Ruby is not the most explosive finisher, but it is one that I do like. It is a little luck dependent at times, but so are really any finishers. I do think there is value to this. So let's talk about what it does. This level 3 Ruby combo to a Shining Stage Ruby. When she's placed on stage from hand, if you have Bikomachi Eye in your memory, you may heal 1. Then when she attacks, if you have the door climax, you may discard any card from your hand. If you do, you look at up to 2 cards from the top of your opponent's deck. Choose up to 2 characters with X or lower total power from among them. Put them into their clock in any order. Put the rest to waiting room. X is equal to the number of cards with different names in your memory times 4,000. So if you have, for example, 3 different cards, not characters, cards in your memory with different names, and you use her effect, let's say you reveal a level 3 character from the top of your opponent's deck that has 9,000 power, and you reveal a level 0 that has 2,000 power. You would get to put both of them straight into your opponent's clock because their total power is 11,000, and if you had 3 different cards in memory, then you could put a total amount of power of 12,000 or less from the characters that you reveal at the top. So you do have to be playing a lot of cards that revolve around memory. However, set 1, there were several different cards that you could be playing that would go to memory. This Ruby combo never really saw play though because some of the cards weren't that great. You had to spend a lot of stock to make it work. Set 2 really fixes the problem, and I am not saying that this is going to be like a tier 1 finisher or anything like that, but if you're a fan of Ruby and maybe you like Door, maybe you like the art, whatever your reasons are, you don't have to explain yourself to me. I like this combo. It has weaknesses. It is not closing the game out the same way that the Kana or the Kane does, but I like Ruby, I like Door, I like what it's trying to do, I like the flavor of the whole memory stuff. It's a very solid combo. I think this combo feels bad though, I will say. From my testing in the simulator, you don't really want to see 2 characters that can go straight into your opponent's clock. And the reason for that is if you see 2 characters that just go straight into your opponent's clock, let's say you reveal 2 zeros off the Ruby's effect. You reveal 2 characters, 2 level zeros, whatever, they go to your opponent's clock. Well, at that point, you just did a whole lot of memory setup just to do a burn 2. That's really all you did. At that point, you could just be playing the Ruby choice combo that we looked at in the previous slide. Where I think this combo really shines is if you reveal a character that can go to your opponent's clock, as well as a climax from the top of your opponent's deck. Because then this card, whether it was inadvertent or not, kind of becomes like a card that balances a Mocha with putting something straight into your opponent's clock. It's still dealing damage while help getting rid of a climax from your opponent's deck, which maybe then your swing is going to stick. I do think there is value in that. And if you see two climaxes, sure, you're not putting any cards to your opponent's clock, but if you do get rid of two climaxes, I mean, that is pretty good. Realistically, if you were playing any normal deck that wasn't like the Kana or something like that, if your opponent had a couple of one or two climaxes on top, and let's say your combo was just on attack burn 2, well, they'd be canceling the burn 2 and they would just be canceling the swing anyway. So it really doesn't matter. I like that this has the potential to deal with a climax while still putting cards into opponent's clock. I am not a fan of Mochas. I think Mochas are really bad if they don't deal any additional damage. If it's just a Mocha 2 or a Mocha 3 even, I just don't think they're good. But when it has the potential to be a Mocha that still manages to put cards into opponent's clock, I do think there is more value to that. So I do like this combo. I don't love this combo, but I like Ruby enough, and I like what it has going for it. It is sort of dependent on luck based on what's on the top of your opponent's deck. It's also somewhat dependent on what you're playing against because it does whiff on events. If you see an event, all you can do is send it to your opponent's waiting room, which really does suck. Fortunately, in English, we don't really have too many decks that are event focused. The last real event focused deck that we had that was actually like competitive, I would say, unless I'm forgetting something, was Denmachi, and that was like years ago, and Denmachi hasn't done anything in a while. And that ran like 12 events. We certainly see decks that do play events in the modern game, but their deck just isn't going to be chock full of events. So this is less likely to whiff. So for anyone that does make that argument, realistically, it's not going to be something you should have to worry about too much, to be honest. But there is some really cool support around this card that helps make it better. We have from set 1 this 1/1 event that's Words Left Behind. You can't play it if you don't have a character with Aqua or Ruby on your stage, but that should be pretty easy to do. We play enough of them. When you use it, search your deck for up to one show business character, reveal to your opponent, add to hand, shuffle your deck, and then if you don't have a B Komachi I in your memory, that is the level 0 Riki from set 1, you may choose one B Komachi I in your waiting room and put it into your memory, and then you put this Words Left Behind event into your memory. So this is a really nice way to pay 1 stock, get 2 memory, and still add a character to your hand of a character of any level, so it's very selective, and it's from your deck, which is great, and it's red, which is really great because we're playing a level 1 red combo, so we can use this 1/1 event as soon as we hit level 1. The art is also stunning, not that that factors into how good a card is, but it should be considered because it really is beautiful and sad, and I'm not crying or anything like that. But what is really great is that though both of these two cards did exist in set 1, there was no other way to get a card into memory without paying stock. This was a way to get 2 cards into memory for 1 stock, as long as you didn't already have the Bikomachi Eye in your memory. The issue, though, is that in set 1, the only Riki you had was that Eye, so not being able to use your Riki, because it does send itself to memory when you use it, just so that you could get it there with the event, it wasn't really practical, to be honest. Now that we have other Riki alternatives like the Aqua or the Kana, it feels better to play the iRiki, but not necessarily use it right away, or not feel the need to grab it if it gets dumped into your waiting room. Because then you could just pay 1 stock and get it into memory anyway. Now you've got 2 cards in memory. Plus, we are playing 4 copies of the level 0 I that we've talked about. That's a level 0 reverser and can send itself to memory for essentially free when it dies. At that point, you have 3 differently named cards in your memory, all for 1 stock if you use this event. And you're still getting advantage out of it. You're getting deck speed with the level 0 I. You are getting very selective search from your deck for only 1 stock, 1 hand. You're thinning out your deck and you're getting some memory compression, which is nice. 2 of those cards are going to be zeros, so you are very good in the Oshi mirror match when you're going up against Kana or Kane. it's just a very, very solid package overall. And think it's very feasible to get at least three differently named cards in your memory because this event exists and because we have the new level 0 I bomb. Um, we also are running the Aqua JC, which also sends itself to memory. So it's pretty easy to get four cards in your memory for only two stock. That is very, very, very strong. Just in general, it's very good. They're also very playable cards. All those cards are good. All the cards that send themselves to memory in this deck specifically, they're good. You don't When you only had set one stuff, you kind of had to play cards that would not be the best cards, but they'd go to memory, and you kind of would just have to suck it up and play them because you needed a bunch of different cards in memory. Um, but I think it's perfectly fine if you only get three differently named cards into your memory. If you get the fourth one, which should be easy enough to be honest, I think it's better to have it than to not have it for multiple reasons. But I do think this Ruby combo is a little underrated. I do fully acknowledge and understand why people don't feel like playing it or why it's not going to top a ton. But I think if you're just a fan of Oshi and you want something new, you get a little tired of playing Kana or tired of playing Akane, this is a combo that is worth looking at. There's also other reasons why you might want to play it. There is some support around it that does help, whether not necessarily directly, but it does help. We have this Underground Idol debut Ruby on the right here. She's been patiently chilling for me to talk about her. She is from set 1. She's a red 1-0, which is good because she's red, so we can use her right away because our level 1 combo is red. When she attacks, if you have another show business character, she gets 1500 power for the turn, and when she attacks, if Bikomachi Eye is in your memory, she gets 500 additional power until the end of turn, and you reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a Mask of Revenge Aqua, which is the level 1 Aqua combo that we are not playing here, that's in blue. But if it's that character, or if it's a level 2 or higher card, you may put it into your stock. I think this pairs really, really well with the level 1 Kana combo that we are playing, because for anyone who needs a reminder, the level 1 Kana combo is a top check 4, add a character, and if you add a level 2 or higher, you may look at the top 3 cards of your deck and rearrange them, which makes it really easy to set up a level 2 or higher for this Ruby. Now, if you just don't see any level 2 or higher, well, it is what it is. But it's really easy to set it up. At that point, you're still swinging with a climax. You are still swinging for 7-5, so it should be able to get a reverse on any level 1s your opponent left out for you. But just to get some free stock, you also don't need to have a climax when you use it, so it is good throughout the course of the game if you're not slamming a climax every turn. Solid enough card overall. Needing to have the Bikomachi Eye in your memory is a little annoying. Sometimes the game just doesn't work out where you don't get to either your 3 copies of Eye or the 3 copies of the event. But from my testing, most of the time it's not really that big of a deal. You are also only playing 2 copies of it in this list, so it's not like your whole deck revolves around hitting those numbers. But most of the rest of the deck is going to be pretty standard. From stuff we've already seen, we are playing 3 copies of the Eye Riki and only 2 copies of the Aqua Riki instead of the reverse, because it is important that we get the Eye. We do need it to be in our memory. We do want it to be in our waiting room so that the 1/1 event can send it to memory. That is important. But luckily, it still is a very good card, so it's not like it's the worst thing. We still have access to the Aqua Riki, so we can level ourselves up if need be. From my testing in the simulator, having this sort of ratio, it really doesn't change anything. I am still playing the Akane Rico so that I can get to the Aqua Riki whenever I feel like I need it. We are on 8 door, which means we trigger doors and we just add anything back from our waiting room. We still have a lot of access to the Aqua Riki, so for anyone that thinks it should be higher, from my testing, my initial thought was that it would be a problem. I will say that. When I actually tested it, it really was never an issue. I always had access to it if I needed it, and I oftentimes did not need it. The level 3 Ruby combo requires no stock, just like the other Ruby that we looked at from a choice, which means we can be a little more liberal with our stock throughout the game, which is good because we do have plenty of cards that do require stock, but we still have, just the double bouncer. We've got the early play red heal, which is great. We've got the Ruby Saga character at a climax level 3 that we're been playing in every deck so far. Got the Fumio, the Stock Shuffle. There's just a lot of really, really great options. Oshi is very much like a toolbox where there's just so many good things in all colors that do all sorts of different things. Some people might want to add a fourth copy of the event. I wouldn't be against that. I kind of do for my testing want to add a fourth copy of it. I'm just not exactly sure what to cut. My first instinct was to change the early play to 2 copies, but I did want to have as many level 2 or higher in my deck as possible so that I don't whiff on the ruby. I'll figure something out, but this is a solid enough shell of what this deck could look at, what this deck could look like. I do, again, not to just like hype up the level 3 Ruby combo a lot. Most people that I've ever talked to about it, they just say it's outright bad. I definitely understand why they would think that, and I am not saying that you should take this to a regional or something, but I think there is some value to it. Some of it is going to be luck dependent, and it won't always feel great if you just put 2 characters straight into your opponent's clock, because then it was just a burn 2. But it's still a cheap burn 2 at only a ditch 1. That's not terrible. My only real complaint about it is that I don't really like that you need to have the eye in memory. The goal is to always have that eye in memory, so it really doesn't come up. I guess it's more of a principle thing. I think it should just heal on play just because you're paying 2 stock to get a level 3 combo out, and it should just heal for free. You shouldn't need that. But I do appreciate the flavor of it at the very least. It's a very, very fun deck overall, and I do personally enjoy it, and I'm very excited. I bought the OFRs recently for the level 3 combo. They look really great. I've had the SPs forever as just an aside, and I've never used them, and I've always sort of hated that I bought them and never used them. But the double rare art also looks really great. So it's just a very, very solid overall deck that still has most of the same pieces that we've looked at a ton. It's in a great color, and the memory compression is very, very nice. And I will say this deck does more memory than pretty much any of the other Oshi lists that I have played. And memory compression is something that most decks can't do, and they can't do it really well. It's been a while. Like, we haven't seen a really good memory deck since Bunny Girl. Bunny Girl is still around, but not as much as it used to be. Before that, it was Psychono, and Psychono didn't do anything by the time we got it. And before that, it was Slime. And Slime's on the list for a reason. So it's nice to be able to have some very competent memory type stuff to work with for a change. As an alternative to the Kana level 1 combo, if you don't want to play that for whatever reason, there is an alternative where you can still be playing the level 3 Ruby combo, and it's actually pretty good. We have the level 1 Ruby combo from the trial deck. Her effect is pretty simple. It is when you attack, you give one of your showbiz characters 1500 power until end of turn, and when she attacks, if you have the door climax, so we're still on 8 door, pick one of your characters. It can be itself if you want, but you can pick any of your characters. Give it the ability until end of turn that when its battle opponent becomes reversed, you may pick a character in your waiting room and salvage it. Solid combo. It may not give deck speed like the Kana. It may not set things up as well as the Kana. But I think for a trial deck combo, it's still very solid. If you want to go as much Ruby as possible, it's a perfectly good level 1. One benefit that this combo does have is that we have this 1/0 modeling job I. During your turn, if you have another character, she gets 3000 power, and when you play her on stage from hand, if you have another show business character, you may discard any card. If you do, search your deck for up to 1 Creepy Kid Aqua, which is a trial deck brainstorm that we're not playing, or Glimpse of a Nihil Ruby, which is the level 1 combo on the left. Put it in a position of your stage and shuffle your deck. It's a great way to basically just get out your Ruby combo without having to pay stock by using the Ricky. Very solid card. I like the package a lot. It feels really good for my testing. I have really enjoyed it. So there is a benefit to that. I will never complain about having more I in my deck. But for anyone that doesn't want to play the Kana, maybe you don't feel like buying the double rares for it, or you don't like Kana, or whatever it might be. Again, no one needs to explain themselves here. I think this is a really great alternative where you could still be on 8 door The only other door combos are a really crappy one from set 2 where it's a level 1 that can't be reversed, but it's really bad. Don't waste your time playing it. And there is a level 0 door combo from set 1 where it is an eye combo, but it's okay. It salvages and then gives you the chance to maybe salvage again. But you can only use like one copy of it because I think it stacks the climax. It's not the greatest thing. I prefer something a little more consistent like this. And I think this package together is very solid overall. So this version is very, very similar. It's almost identical to the previous 8-door build. The difference is I did take out the 1-0 rubies that could stock you. So I could throw in the 1-0 that summons your level 1 combo. And I also lowered the early play so that I can add in a third copy of the eye summoner. Doesn't matter as much that we're playing less level 2s and higher because we're not playing the Underground Idol Underground Idol Ruby. Space was just getting very tight once we start adding in the summoner and stuff like that. So this is again just sort of a shell you can use. There's plenty of room to swap things out. There's not a ton you really need to keep here outside of if you want to play the combos, you obviously keep the combos, but you can definitely have a lot of free reign with the zeros. Been playing with the ratios and stuff like that. Unfortunately, unlike some other sets, there's no real door support, so there's not really a benefit to playing 8-door other than if you don't like having a whole bunch of different colors in your deck, or you just like door as a trigger, which is perfectly fine. Door is a good solid trigger. Playing 8 of them is not bad. Red is arguably the best color in Oshi between both volumes, so you have access to a whole bunch of really great cards at all levels, and that's never a bad thing. Moving on to another 8-door deck. This is actually going to be 2 different 8-door deck profiles that focus on the eye trial deck combo. The trial deck combo came out with set 1 and it featured eye, and there is a whole little support package around it that personally to me feels a little gimmicky, but I do love eye, so I'm not going to complain about it. There is some value to it. This is just a generic list here. We got the level 3 eye combo, also back on the Kana level 1 combo because it's just a very solid door combo. But the level 3 eye is when you place her on stage from hand, you may heal 1, and on attack, if you have the door climax, you may pay 1, ditch 1. If you do, you deal 2 damage, and she gets great performance. Great performance, for anyone who doesn't know, is an ability that characters can have where when they have great performance, if they are in the middle position of your center stage and they are not reversed, your opponent must frontal attack, and when they frontal attack, they attack her instead of their respective lanes. So as long as you use the climax combo and she is not reversed and she's in the middle center, very important, it does have to be middle center. Even if your opponent tri-fields and they attack with the left lane, they are forced to frontal, they cannot side, but they will frontal, but the attack will be directed at her instead of the character directly across from it. This great performance doesn't get printed a ton anymore. Usually it's not real, there's not a ton of support for it anyway. This is more flavor because for anyone who hasn't watched the show, she's like an idol and she kind of just wants to be like the center of attention. Even amongst her group, she wants to be the standout. So the great performance is kind of like a little bit of flavor. But there are there's a couple of cool things you can do with great performance in this set. But there is a whole package around this card that's built to help it. One way is you can get this combo out at level 2 without needing a standby. We have this 2-1 from Mother to Children event. The event says if you have Creepy Kid Aqua, which is the Aqua in the middle, and you have Practicing Together Ruby and I, which is the 2-1 on the right, if both of them are on your stage, you pick up to 1 Unshakable Center Eye, that's level 3 combo. You put it on any position of your stage, and it gets the following ability until end of turn, where during its battle, your opponent cannot play event cards or backup from their hand, and then you put this event into your memory. It's a very cheap way to sort of cheat out this event. I guess at the end of the day, you are spending the same amount of stock because you do have to play this 2-1. So the 2-1's a stock, the event's a stock. However, the 2-1 is a good card. It is an assist. So all of your characters in front of it get X power. X is equal to that character's level. It also has another effect where you can discard a card and rest this 2-1 to look at up to two cards from the top of your deck. Pick one, add it to hand, rest go to waiting room. The I don't think there's anything wrong with playing that card, even if you didn't need it as part of the early play condition for the event. Unfortunately, you are forced to play this creepy kid Aqua, who is a trial deck brainstorm, and trial deck brainstorms are pretty much always pay one, rest themselves, mill five for every climax draw card. They're not really that good. This one does have a secondary effect where if you have two or more showbiz characters, all of your level 3 combo I here, plus the level 1 trial deck Ruby combo, they gain 1,000 power. That's something, I guess, but it's still a draw brainstorm, and that does stink. So that kind of sucks that you are forced to play this kind of bad brainstorm just so you can get the early play condition. But I don't think there's anything wrong with playing the 2-1. Uh, that's a good enough card on its own. Plus, it helps keep your eye from getting reversed, so her great performance will stay live. I like that the event does give the ability that during the eye's battle that it can't be chosen. It can't. Your opponent can't use backups or events. That is really strong. I do wish though that they had just printed that it can't be chosen by your opponent's effects that turn. That would have been infinitely better because she's safe during her battle, but when you attack with your other lanes, your opponent can then still use anti-change backups, which and they could kill the eye. But if they had said that the eye gets the ability that it can't be chosen by effects that turn, it just would have been better because then even when you attack with your other stuff, you don't have to worry about your eye leaving. You just sort of did a lot of setup to bring out your eye, and it would really suck to lose her to an anti-change backup. Um, so it is a minor gripe. But for a trial deck combo, I think it's actually very solid. It is the best girl, and the art's beautiful on all of them. Even Aqua's got his funny art from a funny scene that he did from the show. Burn 2 is not bad when you're able to start doing it at 2. And having the great performance can be interesting. It is a very cheap combo. It heals, so you're getting a little bit of healing at 2. You can definitely do more than one copy of this at 2, but it is a big hand cost. You don't need anything different on your stage because it's not like you have to sack like the level 0 Aqua or the 2-1 or anything like that, which sometimes when we have these early play conditions, it will have to sack something. You don't have to worry about that, but at that point, it does become a lot of hand. Plus, the climax, you might just sort of run out of hand if you're playing more than one copy of this eye at level 2. So even if you get extra heals and burns, it might be better just to wait, but it's entirely dependent on what's going on in that game. We do have other support for this eye. There is this Idle Fan Dance Ruby. When she is played and placed on the stage, you may pay the cost, which is to discard any card. If you do, you pick one Unshakable Center Eye or Idle Fan Dance Aqua. Idle Fan Dance Aqua is a card that you shouldn't play and that I'm not playing. It's a generic 1-0 blue Aqua that I think has like 5,500 power. No point in playing it, it serves no purpose. But it's nice that you have a Bonder to your level 3 combo that only costs the hand and no stock. That is really good. Also, it has another effect where you could pay one and send this ruby to your waiting room. If you do, you salvage the 2-1 event that summons the eye. That's pretty cool. I think being able to salvage two specific pieces is really good, especially the event. It's nice to be able to have one card that bonds to both the level 3 combo plus the event. For a level 0 from a trial deck, very solid. I don't mind it at all. There is also this 2-1 that just came out in set 2. Even though she came out a set later, she actually still works on the same idle climax as the level 3 eye here. It's not the most amazing effect, but it is something you can do where she's a 2-1. When you play the idol climax, if she's in your center stage and you have four or more other show business characters, pick up to one character in your waiting room, add it to hand, then choose one of your characters. It gets 2,000 power until the end of your opponent's next turn. This is nice. Obviously, you're going to give it to the eye that's in your center. That way, it survives really anything once you have the assist and the 2k power backing it up. That way, it's great performance. Great performance will be inactive the second that eye becomes reversed. So if they reverse it on their first swing, then you lose the performance. It can't be reversed in order for it to maintain that. So this is a way for it to maintain power. Plus, when it attacks, it gets X power. X is equal to the number of other show business characters you have times 1,000. Because you wouldn't really be using her if you didn't have a full field, because then you'd miss out on her climax combo. She will be gaining 4,000 power. So with the assist and with the climax, she's going to be swinging really, really big. That's 11k. 12k, that is 13k. That is very strong. That should be clearing like anything your opponent's going to have defensively. It'd be nice if she maintained some power cross turn, but I guess if you have great performance with the eye, it doesn't really matter so much. But it's a decent enough card. Something that is very popular with great performance cards, especially if they can come out at 2, is to pair them with a memory backup. There is one from set 1. It's just a standard. Use it, you pay the 1, give the character in battle 3,000 power, plus the ability that when its opponent gets reversed, send it to memory. Because the eye has great performance and all your opponent's characters are going to be forced to frontal into it, if you use the memory kick Ruby here, not only will she gain the power, but each of the opponent's characters that crash into her and get reversed, which should be everything if you're playing this deck right, they're all going to go to memory. Now, it does stink to give your opponent memory compression, but it's nice to have this card as an option because there are some finishers out there and some decks that do require full boards. So it is just nice to be able to just deal with that and deal with their entire board, and they really don't have any option out if they're not bouncing the eye or memory blinking it or something like that. There's not really any other way to play around it. They're just forced to frontal. If you're playing against Overlord and they already blew up your board or something like that, and now they don't have the goats to do it again, it does put them in a really bad spot because, hopefully with the 2k power from the 2-1, I would have to compare the powers, but hopefully with all the buffs you're given to the eye plus this memory kick, you should be able to get over their Eins, and then you basically win from there. But it's always good. This combination of memory kick with great performance gets seen pretty much whenever someone's playing great performance because there's just a lot of very good synergy with it. I do think that this list is, it's not going to be the most competitive thing. I think considering that a lot of the key cards do come from a trial deck, that is good. Of course, we do have the standard 0 lineup where there's a lot of stuff we've already seen. I did throw in 2 copies of the Ruby Brainstorm because we're not going to rely on the Aqua Brainstorm because it's terrible. You're going to have to play one to your stage just because, but hopefully you're not in a position where you really need to use its actual Brainstorm effect. But the rest of it's like pretty standard, nothing crazy. Again, lots of flexible spots. Playing this and playing it out early does eat up a lot of slots in your deck, so that is something to think about. But if you like and you like playing your combos early, there's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly fine. So it is an option. There is an alternative. It's kind of an alternative that I prefer, and that is that you don't even bother trying to get the combo out early at all. And the reason for that is because you free up so many deck slots once you don't lock yourself into just trying to get the eye out as early as possible. Yes, there is an advantage to that. You're pushing more damage early at 2, you're healing at 2, but everyone is playing an anti-change backup these days. It's too easy for your opponent to just kill it once it's not battling. It feels really bad to spend a lot of resources just to lose something like that at level 2. So there's nothing wrong with playing the whole package to get it out at level 2. It doesn't really fit my play style. I'm okay that it doesn't have the highest ceiling. At the end of the day, it is just a burn 2. And I'm fine with that because it's still a trial deck combo, so I accept it for what it is. But it is the best girl. It has beautiful artwork, so I don't really mind. And taking out all that early play stuff that you are forced to play does free up so many deck slots. Like if we just compare this list to the other list, not only do we not have to play the stupid Aqua Brainstorm, so now we could play 3 Ruby Brainstorms. At level 1, I added in 2 new cards. It is this Aqua 1-0 from set 2, where he gains 1,000 power whenever one of your other characters attacks, and when he attacks, you can sack a character to reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a character, add it to hand, so it's a great way to get stockless hand advantage. He's also in red, so 1-0 red, very strong in this deck. There's also this 1-0 I, which I thought was appropriate for an I deck. It came out in set 2 also. During your turn, I think she gains 4,000 power, so she's 7-5 with a climax. And when she gets reversed, you can pay 1, discard a card, send herself to memory. If you do, look at up to 2 cards from the top of your deck, add 1 of them to hand, the rest go to waiting room. I think it's a very solid card. Memory compression is always great. It's a beautiful card. We're still playing the 2-1 memory backup because when we hit level 3, our eyes will still have great performance. Or the middle eye will still have great performance the following turn. So we've still got the 2-1 assist because I do think it's a good card. Between the memory backup, between the 2-1 assist, the center slot that has great performance. The center eye should have enough power with the memory backup and everything else assisting it that it should be fine. Plus, we are playing still the 3-2 Ruby. It hasn't been mentioned in this video, but in addition to her effect where on play you could sack a character to salvage a climax, she has another ability where if you have 2 different cards in your memory, she is a frontal assist for 2k, I think it is. So if you use that, that's another way to pump power to the center slot. It's really easy to meet that memory condition in this deck. We're playing the standard I level 0. We're still playing the Aqua JC that goes to memory. We are playing this new 1-0 red eye that goes to memory. So it's pretty easy to meet that condition. Overall, I would say for an 8-door deck, we get a little bit of a boost in terms of competitiveness because we are playing the Kana level 1 combo, which just is a really, really great combo, and it helps you be a little defensive while giving you deck speed. So that does make up a little bit for the fact that our top end is a little weaker. But there are plenty of, even in the modern game, there are plenty of decks that, because they're consistent, they don't need to be as explosive on the top end. Something like Bochi, which has won at least 1 regional during the 2025, early 2026 regional season. I think it might have won 2. Bochi's top end is just a burn 3, but the whole deck is just very smooth. It's very consistent. You get a lot of deck speed. You can build resources easily. Where there are certain decks like Bochi and other ones like that where you don't need some combo that is Gura level good, where you're just dealing multiple instances of burn very consistently. You can have a more humble top end in exchange for consistency before then. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't expect anyone to like be topping with this deck at a regional or this level 3 combo at a regional or anything like that. But I think if you just like there's nothing wrong with taking it to a regional. Just, know that it's not the strongest Oshi deck that you could be playing, but it's still perfectly fine. If you are playing this version instead of the early play I version, you don't have to make any sacrifices to your deck whatsoever. You don't have to fill deck slots, waste deck slots with bad cards, or sculpt for very, very specific cards. Even though there is a merit to playing the whole early play package, there's also a merit in just playing the eye as is, and she's just a burn 2 that gives you great performance. You play against something like Duel Laners, Tokyo Revengers, or Bochi, or anything else that requires a full field, and you hit level 3 first, and you use the level 3 eye with great performance, and you got the memory backup. Well, your opponent basically lost their level 3 game because they're not going to have a full board after their first swing. So, good card. Even if it's not the most explosive or anything, very, very solid deck. The shell is still really good. There is nothing wrong with the shell of this deck. This version, I think, is more consistent than the 8-door Ruby top end. But the 8-door Ruby, depending on what you see off the top, and depending on what your opponent's deck state is and how they cancel, and it's all things that are outside of your control, could maybe have reach a little bit higher than this eye. But cheap burn twos can win. Maureen has been topping for almost as long as Hololive has been out. I lost to Maureen at the Philadelphia Regional. I went 5-2, and it was one of my two losses. Now, I lost for other reasons because Maureen is so efficient, but at the end of the day, it was still a burn 2. There is nothing wrong with just having a simple burn 2 sometimes, and this is a very easy one to triple. It's on a good climax trigger. Everything else about it is great. You have great tech options. There's so many great Oshi options that aren't here that you can throw in instead of some of the cards here. Just a lot of fun. And if you like Eye and you like Oshi, I think this is a very great way to get started with Weiss if you're an Oshi fan and play a bunch of different characters that you probably like. A deck that I think is pretty interesting, and I am very excited to talk about it. I haven't gotten to play it in person yet, and unfortunately, the simulator is a little broken on some of the cards in this list. But from what I've been able to test as much as I can, it is actually very strong, and on paper, they still read really great. That is an 8 standby version of Oshi No Ko. Set 1 Oshi No Ko had 2 standby combos. Both of them are pretty bad, to be honest, but the big benefit to both of the standby combos from set 1 was that you didn't need a specific standby climax to use either one. There were 2 standby climaxes in set 1, and you could use either standby climax with either of the standby combos in the set. Oshi No Ko Volume 2 continues that tradition. You cannot use them with the same climaxes from the combos from set 1. There are 2 brand new standby combos climaxes in this in set 2. However, the combos themselves are like infinitely better than what we got with set 1. This is the list. It is definitely, I would say, the most different out of any of the lists we've looked at today, because standby is just sort of a different beast and there's different goals with it. So there's a lot more sort of like flexibility with what we were setting out to do. But this is just a quick look at the list. We are going to come back to the list. First, let's talk about the actual standby combos themselves. The first is the 1-1, the Twins Bond, Aqua and Ruby. If there's a card in your memory, it gets 500 power, cross turn, and the following abilities. During your turn, it gets 2500 power and Hand Encore. Unfortunately, that Hand Encore is only on your turn, which does stink a little bit. Its climax combo, though, is if you have one of 2 different standby climaxes in your climax area, when its battle opponent becomes reversed, you may salvage any character from your waiting room. This is very reminiscent of the 1-1 Nino combo from Quince. The only real difference is that Nino swung a little bit bigger, plus it had on attack top check, which would help you set up your triggers. This does not have that. Now, to be fair, even though this is technically a worse version of that Nino was probably too good. So I think this is probably like the fair version of that Nino. That Nino was really strong, and there's a reason why it topped as much as it did, and there's a reason why Standby Nino was on the ban list in English and JP. That one with Nino is just too good, to be honest. However, while this does not give you trigger fixing abilities, and it does not have as much power as that Nino, it still works on one of 2 different standby climaxes, meaning you don't have to worry about having a climax swapper or setting yourself up with the right climax. As long as you have a climax, you're good to go. And I think that sort of ease of use, for lack of a better phrase, and the versatility behind that for what it does on a standby is actually incredibly strong. You're still getting a salvage as long as you meet the memory condition, which is easy enough to meet in Oshi No Ko. You should be hitting the memory condition very easily, and so you're swinging really big. It still has the climax combo regardless of if there's anything in your memory, so that's not really something that you have to worry about. Plus, you have this level 0, which also works on one of 2 different standby climaxes. On play, you discard a character if you do draw a card, so very sort of good standby filtering, get the higher level characters out of your hand to draw, maybe draw into a climax or something you might need. And then its climax combo is if you play one of two standby climaxes, you may return it to your hand. If you do, choose one of your characters, and until the end of your opponent's next turn, it gets 1,000 power plus hand encore. Now, you can give it to anything, that power and the hand encore, but you could also give it to the 1-1 combo here. It's great that you can use all of these cards together on the same climax. It's incredibly versatile. It does sort of fix this level 0 Ruby does fix the fact that the 1-1 Aqua doesn't actually have hand encore on your opponent's turn, which is when you're most likely to need it anyway. But being able, the fact that it jumps back to hand in order to gain the power, in order to give something power plus give something hand encore, it not only frees up lanes in your backstage for you to summon a character off of standby, but it also means that the following turn you can then play it again to do another draw ditch effect, or I guess ditch draw effect, which is really great in standby, really great overall. The value, I think, of this level 0 as you're using it throughout the course of the game and just continuously using it, I think it's sort of as like a snowball effect, and it just really, really adds up throughout the course of the game. And the 1-1 is just really good. I love the 1-1. We are not playing a traditional 1-1 standby target. Usually 1-1 standby targets have been 7,500 power cross turn with hand encore. 7,500 isn't quite as good as it used to be. It's not worth the deck slots, I think, in this. I think in this we'd rather just standby out the 1-1 combo here. It's that good. That sort of replaces the traditional 1-1 standby target. Or one of the zeros in the deck that can still have value even if it's standbyed out. So not playing any traditional 1-1 standby targets, but I still think we have a very good list of things that standby out at level 1. But there's also some other really cool cards in the set where even if we had these good standby combos with Oshi set 1 instead of the really bad standby combos we got with Oshi set 1, there was a big problem was that there is no level 3 standby combo, so there's no finisher for the set, and the only all finisher we had was the eyes that naturally draw you in eye, the one that's in the middle. And don't get me wrong, it's a fantastic off finisher. She is a global 15, so all of your other show business characters get 1500 power, which is really great in standby. She gives that ability regardless of where she is on your stage, so she doesn't even have to be center stage. And then she has an off finisher effect where at the start of your encore step, if she is in your center stage and there are no characters in your opponent's center stage, or all characters that are in your opponent's center stage are reversed, you may pay 1, ditch 1. If you do, mill the top card of your deck and deal X damage. X is equal to the level of the milled card plus 1. This was really your only off finisher, and it is a fantastic off finisher, but it's not quite enough on its own when you don't have a traditional level 3 finisher combo. Fortunately, set 2 gave us 2 new off finishers to supplement the eye. The first is this Kana on the left. She is at end of attack. If you have a full field, you may pay 2, discard a card, and sack a character from your stage. If you do, you stand her. Very solid card. Very relatively cheap restander. Being end of attack is fantastic. Now, it does have to be the turn that she's placed on stage from hand, so you can't standby her out and then use her restander ability. But that's fine because the other two off finishers that we're playing, the Eye and the Aqua, they don't have that restriction. They don't have to be played from hand in order to gain that ability. The Aqua is when he's placed on stage from hand, you may look at up to X cards from top of deck, pick a card, add it to hand, rest go to waiting room. X is equal to the number of show business characters you have, and then he's a simple on attack, pay 2, ditch 2, burn 2. You can stand by him out and still do his off finisher effect. So he's less of a stock costed off finisher and more of a hand costed off finisher. But I think that's fine because we're constantly looping the level 0 Ruby. Ideally, we're just slamming a climax every turn. If you are walling up, you are hopefully maintaining hand size, so you should have a full hand. Stand by this guy out at level 2, use him the following turn. This lineup of off finishers is so incredibly versatile. While it's not impossible to play more than one copy of the Kana because we are on standby. So even though she does need a full field, but she sacks a character, you could always standby out and trigger a standby and then get a full field back. I think, however, the ideal board is what I like to do is start my level 3 attack phase with pretty much the lineup that you see here. One copy of the Kana, one copy of the Eye, and one copy of the Aqua. What's really awesome is that the Eye in the middle there, she doesn't actually use her effect until Encore Step. This is very, very important because if during your attack phase you trigger a standby at some point, you can summon out another copy of the Eye and you could play over a character in your center stage that's already attacked, like the Aqua or the Kana. And then during your Encore Step, even though it never attacked and even though it's rested, you can use its burn ability. This is a really great way to sort of cheese out extra burns and get extra instances of damage that you might not normally have been able to reach. The Global 15 is always going to be nice. It's going to be really easy to get over everything. Since you're already in standby, generally the idea of standby is you're already walling up, so power shouldn't even be a factor by the time you get to level 3. But from the testing that I've been able to do, this whole package just feels really, really strong. If you are really high rolling it, I have had a couple of games where I've been able to do one of the Kana and two of the Aqua, and then I triggered two standbys, and I was able to still use the two Eye off finishers that I summoned via those triggered standbys during my Encore Step. The stock really is not the issue with that, to be honest. It's really more of the hand at that point, but it's still perfectly doable. Because if you start the turn with a full hand, it's easily doable. Even the Dish 2 on the Aqua, it's still more like you only need like 8 cards then if you want to do double Aqua, one Kana. Assuming you played the Kana from hand and you standby out at least one of the Aqua, because the Aqua does replace a card on play. The stock really isn't that big of an issue, especially if you've been doing normal standby shenanigans. The hand can be a bit harder, but at the end of the day, you're getting a lot of different instances of burn and at very different times in the game of the turn, so you know whether it's worth it to use it. It's just a very fun package. I really do like it a lot. We do also have this level 0 brainstorm. Unfortunately, I didn't really like the Ruby Salvage brainstorm when I was playing it. This is a draw brainstorm, which I already shat on Aqua for having a draw brainstorm, but this one is infinitely better because it is, for every climax that you hit, it is draw 2, ditch 1. This is really fantastic hand filtering. Not only draw 2 is pretty big, even if you have to ditch 1, you're drawing 2 potentially playable cards like a standby that you want to be slamming down, while also ditching a card like a card that you want to bring out via standby. I don't play a ton of copies of this. I do like to have the back row free so I could be standbying stuff out, but it still is important to have some sort of brainstorm. And I did like this. Its first effect is at the beginning of your climax phase. If you have 2 or more memory, you may pick one of your characters and it gets 1,000. It's fine. If it was cross turn, it would be better, but it's really more the double draw and then ditch is really, really strong. Overall, I think this is like a very, very interesting way to play standby. I absolutely just love the versatility of it. Unlike normal standby decks where you really want to wall up, especially with level 2 and just have 2 soul attackers on board. I found that from the JP side of things, anyone that tops with a standby, they really are not playing this 2/2 Ruby, which is the traditional 2 soul hand encore sort of swing big sort of thing. A lot of them are only playing one copy. For my testing, I actually really didn't like it that much either. I found that I would prefer to just sort of be looping my level 1 combo a lot, and instead what a lot of people on JP do, and I didn't actually like when I first read it, but from the testing I've been able to do, I actually do like it. It is this 2/1. I think his name is Melt. He's the blue 2/1 at the top right. When one of your other characters is being attacked, you can sack him from your stage. If you do, you give that character 3,000 power. He also has Hand Encore. 3,000 power is an absolute beast of power. It really helps you wall up. It helps you maintain board. More importantly, it helps you, more importantly than maintaining board, it forces your opponent to crash, which means that your opponent is leaving you open lanes to swing direct. A big problem with standby is that standby climaxes do not give soul, so a lot of the time you're only swinging for one. You have to trigger in order to swing for two, or you have to swing direct in order to swing for two, or you have to be swinging with your two souls, but your two souls aren't going live until a turn after you stand by them out because they're not standing themselves. So just having open lanes fixes that problem a little bit and helps you maintain damage, since standby does often fall behind on damage since it is not giving global one soul with its climax. We are playing the Aqua Ricky, I'm sorry, the Kana on play Ricky, um, because I didn't like playing the normal on summon Aqua Ricky because most of the time I would want my level 1 Aqua Ruby standby combo, but it felt really bad stock wise to play my Aqua Ricky just to search my 1-1, which requires a stock for me to play. I didn't really like that. It felt bad paying 2 stock for a salvage, even if it's a really good salvage character. So I kind of just switched to the Kana so that the idea was just to go for sheer raw card advantage, which is something that standby does traditionally suffer with when it comes to hand advantage. They often are bleeding hand and don't have great ways to recover it. I am playing 3 copies of the Ricky because we do need something in our memory in order for the Aqua to gain a good chunk of power on your turn for the Aqua Ruby standby combo. Plus, I like that it can search out anything from your deck. So, like, we can grab the Kana level 3 restand or off finisher. I like that it's a 0 that if I have to standby out a 0, I wouldn't feel bad about standbying it out because it doesn't have an on play effect. So, it can go live. It can still use its effect since it's on reverse. It doesn't feel bad. I don't feel bad about playing it. It's also why I like how most of the zeros in this deck don't really have an on-play effect. Yes, we have the Akane Rika, which is just in there because it's a good way to grab certain zeros, but also to just sort of get cards out of our hand that we want to be standbying out. But we can standby out the Aqua JC, we can standby out the Ruby level 0, we could standby out the Aqua Brainstorm, the I level 0, whether it's the Riki or the Fuka, which they're just all alive, even if you have to stand by them out. Normally, you don't like to stand by out zeros, but this zero lineup I picked because it doesn't really feel that bad if you are forced to stand by out a zero, and maybe sometimes you're in a situation where you need to stand by out a zero as opposed to a higher level character because you need the effect from that zero. So this is definitely a very interesting standby deck, mostly in terms of how it handles the level 2 game, but I have enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would, and I absolutely adore the level 3 game. It is a lot of fun. I will say, on the one hand, I think it's really great for anyone that is newer to Weiss and doesn't have much experience with standby. Standby could be a concept that I've found is something that's a little tough for newer players to wrap their heads around a little bit. Um, it's not a very hard concept. Overall, it's pretty easy, but it takes some a little, it's a little getting used to, I would say. I think on the one hand, this standby deck is very easy to pick up because you never have to worry about having the specific standby climax like you would in like any other deck, really. I do think that is really good. So on as long as you have a climax, you could be using your climax combos. I think that's really great. I do think though, past that, this version does require you to be a little more familiar with standby. It requires you to be more familiar with the meta and what you're playing against, so you know what you should be standbying out, what you should prioritize, that sort of thing. It requires you to be very aware of your own deck state, where certain cards are, more so than you would in a traditional standby deck, even though that's still something that's very important in a normal standby deck. So parts of this are easier standby for newer players who haven't really used standby a lot. Parts of it are a little harder. I think overall, though, It's a really fun standby package. I do really enjoy it. I'm very excited to test it more in person. Um, it's just red's a great color again. The ratios can be played with a bit. It's just there's not much more to say. It's a lot of fun. I like it a lot, and I don't expect it to like top regionals. But if like one top to regional this current season, I would say, wow, that person probably really knows what they're doing. Because I do think the ceiling on this is higher than people probably are giving it credit for. Um, the floor of this deck, it's not necessarily low, but sometimes you can just like sort of low roll and maybe the game's not going your way. And standby often has a harder time recovering when the game's not going their way because they often have to wait a turn to start using the things they standbyed out, and this deck is really no different. But I think the top end, when you're at level 3, there's just a lot of really cool options. You still have some good tech options at 2 and at 3. This deck is definitely a deck that I think rewards someone who practices it a lot and just gets really good at it and they understand it and they don't have to play exactly what I'm playing. They could throw in other stuff, but when they understand the overall like what this deck is going for, I do think the deck rewards that. And it's definitely a lot of fun. Mostly, I think the big appeal of it is the fact that you can use one of either of two different standby climaxes. That is like a really unique concept that I really do. That's what drew me to it in the first place. But the combos are both just good on their own, and luckily we have all finishers to make up for the fact that we don't have a level 3 game. Um, so yeah, definitely something I think is worth checking out. Next up, we've come to the section where I'm going to talk about budget decks. I think this is a good section for anyone who maybe isn't too familiar with Weiss and you're just starting to get into Weiss, maybe because you saw Oshi Set 2 is coming out and you like Oshi and you wanted to get into it, but you're not quite sure if you want to take a deep dive into the game. And spend a lot of money on some expensive cards if you're not sure if you're going to like the game or something like that. So this section is going to be very, very budget oriented. I've made a point. We're going to look at two different decks with two different level 3 combos and different level 1 combos. Every single card, there's not going to be any double rares in any of these decks. No double rares whatsoever. Even if the double rare was a cheap double rare, because there are cheap double rares out there. Though, to be honest, most of the double rares that we've looked at today, they are on the more expensive side, even by double rare standards. But no double rares, so only the rarities below double rares. There will be trial deck cards included, but I did do a double check of everything in the trial deck. Everything is still readily available. There's nothing that's like worth more than $1, and you'll easily be able to find them. But everything here is cheap. Everything's commons, rares, uncommons, just cheap cards. You can build any of these, very inexpensive, but still have decks that aren't bad. They still deal damage. They still have plussing combos. They still do things at zeros. There's still a Ricky in both of them. Plussing level zeros. Brainstorm. Um, you have to make some caveats when you are not including any double rares whatsoever, but I went through every single card in both sets of Oshi twice, only looking at things below double rare and the trial deck, and there's a pretty good amount of stuff to choose from. Definitely, if you don't feel like spending more, then I didn't price everything up that's going to be in this, but I don't think you'd have to spend more than like $15 when you factor in shipping and stuff like that. I think that's pretty good, all things considered. Um, so let's get started. The first of the two that we're going to look at involves the level 3 Aqua combo from set 1. We are only playing 3 copies of it, not because he's expensive and I wanted to keep costs down, but because realistically you're never going to be able to use more than one copy of it. And since you aren't ever going to field more than one copy of it, there's no reason playing 4 copies. It frees up slots for other things. We'll get back to the full deck list later. Let's look at the 2 combos in the set. First, we'll just look at the Aqua. He wrap up party Aqua. On play, You may sack one of your other characters from your stage. If you do, look at up to 3 cards from the top of your deck, add one to hand, put one to stock, rest go to waiting room. So it's just Maureen. Maureen does the same thing. We've seen that before, nothing crazy. However, Maureen is also just a burn 2. This guy, he is more than a burn 2. His effect is when he attack at the end of his attack, if you have the pants climax, he works on a pants climax. You may pay the cost. The cost is to pay 9 stock and to discard any 2 cards from your hand. If you do, you deal 2 damage to your opponent 3 times. So it's a very simple effect. It does seem very expensive. However, he does come out for 1 stock as long as you sack a character. Plus, he is end of attack. So if you're not using any other stock on anything else throughout the game, throughout this turn, you only need to go into your attack phase with 7 stock. Sorry, you I did the math wrong. It's getting late. I take a break when recording this, so my math skills were never the strongest to begin with. If you start your turn with 7 stock, or before you start doing all your shenanigans, as long as you have 7 stock up front, you can do this card and still do the effect. He'll come out, you'll be down to 6 stock because he'll replenish one. You'll get your 3 swings in, that is 7, 8, 9. At that point, on the 3rd swing, as long as you attack with him last, you will have the stock that you need to use his effect. So that means that if you don't use any stock throughout your turn except for his effect, if you just start your turn with 7 stock, you are good to go. That's a pretty reasonable threshold. You're hard pressed to find any finisher that would need less than 7 stock. Most finishers require some sort of stock payment on attack. The Kana needs 7 stock if you want to triple that, assuming you're not summoning any of them out via the Akane level 0, which I am not playing in this list because he's already so cost efficient. It didn't really seem worth it just to save a stock. I remember once hearing someone say that they were able to successfully resolve 2 copies of this Aqua in the same turn. I did not see it. I'll believe it when I see it. That is an insane amount of stock. If he had that much stock, he was probably already going to win to begin with because the compression on that must just be crazy. But I think it is expensive, but you basically don't have to sculpt anywhere near as much as you would normally. You only need to grab 1 combo piece. The cost to get those burns, you're still getting 6 instances of damage if you just get 3 attacks and then his effect, which is the average amount of instances of damage that you would be getting. So it really isn't that expensive because you only need 7 stock before you play him to use his effect and still get 3 swings in. Like, that is very reasonable to do. And Ditch 2 isn't bad either. The level 1 combo is this Theater Date Akane Kurakawa. She is from set 2. She just came out. She is only a rare. At the beginning of your climax phase, choose one of your showbiz characters. It can be itself, but it can also be something else. That character gets 1500 power until end of turn. And then her climax combo is when the pants climax is placed on your climax area. If you have another show business character, you pick one of your other characters, so that can't be yourself, and that character gets the following ability until end of turn. When this card's battle opponent becomes reversed, search your deck for up to 1 show business character, reveal it to your opponent, add it to hand shuffle your deck. We've seen this before. This is like the Jean from Ruby, but on a different trigger. There is the Ruby from Oshi's trial deck, which is almost like this, except it salvages instead of search. I prefer I prefer search, to be honest, rather than salvage. I like getting some compression out of my deck. This doesn't really dig or anything like that, so you're only taking a couple of cards, depending on how many copies you field of this, out of your deck. But for a rare that is a very inexpensive rare on a good trigger, I think this is a very good combo. I'm excited to actually play this level 1 combo just in other decks. I'm not going to really be playing this deck too much, even though I do like the Aqua and I do own all the cards for it, and I got the nice OFRs for his climax. and I'm very excited to play the level 1 Akane because I actually like that effect. I've loved it when I played Ruby with Jean, and I like pants as a trigger more than I like choice as a trigger. The Jean from Ruby is on choice, why I bring that up. So I think it's a perfectly good combo. I think 8 pants has a lot of synergy. Um, there are several cards that are not double rares that work well with blue as a color, but also with pants. The first one is also from the new set. It is this Akane who says, when your climax triggers, you may pay the cost, which is to discard a climax from your hand. If you do, you mill the top 2 cards of your deck, pick a level X or lower character in your waiting room, and return it to your hand. X is equal to the total level of the milled cards. It would be nice if you got to just salvage any character. However, I can appreciate getting a little bit of deck speed out of this, especially because your level 1 combo isn't giving you any deck speed. It's still exchanging a climax that you may not want, especially if you've triggered a lot. For some playable character, at worst, you'll get a 0. Not bad. I think we have it in. We'll look at the deck list again. I think we have it in there as 2 copies. Very solid card that you want to just plop in the back row. Most, maybe not most, but a good decent chunk of sets that come out that have bar and or pants combos, they will generally have some sort of support for at least one of those. Very often it's something like when your climax triggers, discard a climax, do something, whether it's draw or salvage or something like that. There's also things like on play, discard a climax, grab a character from waiting room, something like that. They seem to like giving support to those. It does, those effects do have good synergy with bar and pants. There is no green in Oshi, so we only have pants, but we are on 8 pants, so it should be very easy to use this Akane pretty regularly. And its second effect is very simple. Rest itself, pick one of a character in your opponent's center stage. It gets minus 1,000 power until end of turn. I actually think that's a very good number. We don't often see minus 1,000. We see minus 500 a very like a lot, like all the time. I think minus 1,000 is really good, especially if you're like in the mirror match and they have the Aqua JC, which is only 1,000 power. You rest this Akane, give minus 1,000. It will just kill the Aqua, so it goes to waiting room. Now they can't use their JC effect, since characters in Weiss die when they hit 0 power. For anyone unfamiliar with that. But I think it's very solid back row thing. In addition to a brainstorm, you just pop it back there for the game and get some characters out of your triggered climaxes. The next card is this other Akane. She is a 1/0. Her effect is when she's placed on stage from hand, you may discard a climax. If you do, you salvage any character from your waiting room. So similar to what I mentioned before, this is a very common profile that we see, that they like to give support when there are bar decks or pants decks. This card is fine. I would say this is bad as a 1/0 if it didn't have its second effect, which is actually very good when it's tied to the first effect. The second effect is when it becomes reversed, if its battle opponent is cost 0 or lower, you may put that character at the bottom of your opponent's deck. This is really, really great. I think having these 2 profiles on a blue card for a character who like all of her climaxes are on pants anyway, I think this combination of effects is really good, efficiency wise when it comes to deck slots. You're sort of just combining 2 really good effects onto one. You'd want to play something that's discard a climax and salvage a character in an 8 pants deck like this to begin with. Then add in the fact that it's also a cost 0 bomb, and it's also like one of the best types of bombs, which is to send it to bottom deck, meaning that they can't encore it. You get to dodge you get to dodge any on death effects. You're also adding, even if it's just 1 card, you're adding clean damage back into their deck right at the bottom. It's a really solid card. I think we have this at 3 copies in the list. Very good card. Like it a lot. I would have liked to put in the 1/0 Akane that's a JC from set 2 because she has really good pants synergy. However, she is a double rare, so we did not include her. But I think this is a very good card. The cost 0 thing means that she will be killing most things she's going to come up against, which is already good on its own. Sometimes you're going to come up against some random decks that have cost zeros that might be problematic to deal with. Like if you're going up against Chainsaw Man, they have a green 1/0 that gains a whole bunch of power for every other copy of the green 1/0 on your stage, on their stage, and they get really, really big. To where it's unreasonable for any of your level ones to get over them, but they're still 1/0s. This just boom gets rid of it. There are other decks that have things similar to that. They may not be the most rampant things you're going to come across, but it's nice to know that if you did come across it, you'll be able to deal with it. And even if you don't come across something like that, just regular level 1 combos, you can just get rid of them with this, which is very nice. Next, we have this Aqua 1/0. He's actually a card that most people are probably going to be playing 4 copies of him in the main meta Door Pants Kana Akane deck. His effect is on play, discard a card, reveal the top card of your deck, then salvage a level X or lower character. X is equal to the level of the revealed card. And then his other effect is when he attacks, if you have 4 more other show business characters, pick one of your characters, it gets 1500 power until end of turn. This is just nice to have that sort of Rico effect. That first effect is a Rico effect. Since we are not playing the Akane level 0 Rico because it is a double rare, this is just an uncommon, so it's really cheap. You still get a Rico, which is good. It's in the color our level 1 combo is, so we don't have to worry about clashing colors at level 1. Plus, his second effect has good synergy with our level 1 combo, which does require reverses. I like that he can give his power anywhere. It does not have to be to himself. Though it can be himself if need be. Between the level 1 combo, your climax, and this guy, you are just pumping so much power on your board. It's really easy to stack the level 1 combos reverses onto one character and just pump that thing to the moon. There is so many ways to just pump it with this deck that you're going to get a reverse somewhere unless your opponent leaves you an empty field. So this card is a great card. It was easy to include it. Very, very solid. Next, we have this event from set 1. This event says, first it's got the little counter symbol, meaning that you can use it on your opponent's turn when they attack you. You can't use it if you don't have a showbiz character, so very easy condition to meet. If your level is 2 or lower, look at up to 4 cards from the top of your deck, pick up to 1 show business character from among them, reveal it to your opponent, put it to hand, the rest of the cards go to waiting room. So this is a really good effect because our level 1 combo doesn't really have deck speed. This is a way to get some stockless deck speed while also getting a character. And being able to use it on your opponent's turn is nice. Because it's blue, we are including it. It is an uncommon, so it fits our rule. It's a card that has only seen minor play in other Oshi decks, never really anything too meta, but on its own there's nothing offensive about this card. And I think in this deck, specifically because of the restrictions that I put on it, this card shines a lot. Because it does give us deck speed for no stock during either player's turn. So if we trigger too many climaxes the turn before when we attacked, this can just sort of help us. We don't have any way to grab this card. There's no bonder, and we don't have anything. There are cards that can grab events, but like the one of them is a promo, the other is a double rare combo at level 1. So I didn't want to include promos in this. Some of the promos can sometimes get expensive, even if they're just like base rarity promos. So you do have to just hard draw this. I think it's fine though. It's not something that's essential to make the deck work, but when you see it, it's nice to have. So definitely an easy fit. When I was thinking of blue level 1s, this immediately sprang to mind. It does have another effect, which you're not going to use too much, but it will come up sometimes, and it is something to think about. It's something that if your opponent knows what it does, you're going to force your opponent to have to think about it. What its second effect is if you are level 3 or higher, you may pay the cost, which is to pay 2, and then discard another copy of this event from your hand. If Then you put this event into your memory and you perform the following action 2 times. Pick one of your characters, and that character gets the following ability until end of turn. The character facing this card gets -2 soul. So you could pick the same character twice and then give -4 soul in that lane, or you just pick 2 different characters and then give -2 soul in both of those lanes. I The one thing I like this card a lot, I like this effect a lot. The one thing that I don't like about this card is I don't like that if you are level 3, you no longer have the option to look at top 4. I don't like that they just shoehorn you into only being allowed to use the Neg Soul effect. I wish that the Neg Soul effect was like an additional effect, additional effect that you could use if you wanted once you were level 3. But if you wanted, you could still use the look at top 4 at a character effect, because you're not allowed to use the look at top 4 once you are level 3. You could only use it when you're level 2 or lower. And sometimes you're going to be stuck with this event and you're not going to have another copy of it, and you basically have a dead card. I guess you have a card to discard off the aqua, but still, but that's a pretty minor gripe. I like its first effect. I like the second effect. Choosing your own character for the Neg Soul is better than just giving the Neg Soul to your opponent's character, because your opponent might have a character that says something like cannot be chosen by opponent's effects or something like that, but you're picking your own characters, and those characters are just giving it to the character across from them. Nothing on your opponent's stage is getting chosen, so you dodge any sort of can't be chosen effects, or anything like that, which is nice. We have 4 copies in here just to increase the consistency of drawing it, and because we would like to have the option of having 2 copies when we're level 3 to give the Neg Soul, but it is a very reasonable cost for what it does. So this is the list again. The level 0s don't have any double rares. We are playing 4 copies of the Akane level 0 that you can see kind of towards the right side of the middle row. She is just, if you have 5 or more cards in hand, she gains 2k power. It might be 15, I forgot. It's one or the other. It's either she becomes 3k or 35. She also has an ability where when she gets a reverse, if you have 4 or less stock, you send that character to the bottom of your opponent's deck. This was the plussing 0 of choice before Oshi set 2 came out. This card was from set 1, and this was the sort of the best plussing 0 that you really had. The only thing that in Oshi set 1 might reasonably survive cross turn without having to pay any stock or hand or anything like that. Definitely not a bad card. It's a good color for our set. Most of this deck is blue, and it's still a good card. Sometimes it will come up where you do just want to bottom deck your opponent's character. And notably, she has no condition for what characters she can use that reverse effect on. You just need to have that stock. You need to make sure you're not over that stock threshold. So if you have a way to pump power to her, you are able to bottom deck characters that are above level 0. As long as you can pump power, which as discussed is something we can very easily do in this set because of our level 1 combo and because of the Aqua Rico. We're playing 1 copy of the helmet. It's just a normal helmet, so send itself to waiting room, discard a card, salvage any character. It also mills 3 on play, which is not bad. Help fill your waiting room, get a little bit of stockless deck speed. We have this level 0 Kana that's right in the middle. This red Kana that it gains some power on your turn. I forgot the exact amount. And at the start of your opponent's attack phase, you can sack one other character on your stage. If you do, you move this Kana to an open position of your backstage. This is a really great way to have sort of like stockless advantage. If one of your characters was going to die that turn anyway because your opponent's characters are bigger, all you have to do is just sack it. It was going to die anyway, and now you get an attacker next turn. That's one less character you have to play from your hand. The only downside to it, honestly, is if you sack a character and now your opponent is swinging direct in that lane, and they are swinging direct in this Kana lane, they might be dealing more damage. That is going to be very dependent on deck state. But sometimes them dealing more damage means you actually will cancel when you weren't going to cancel if they had dealt 1 less soul. It's really just sometimes up to chance and up to you to keep track of your deck state. This card does see a ton of play in almost every Oshi list in Japan. However, I will say that the reason that it sees so much play is not because it's a budget-friendly, strong card. It's mostly because it is a good card. Do not get me wrong. This is actually a very good card in general. It just doesn't fit our format because JP has a lot more decks that require reverses, and this card is a stockless way to deny reverses in 2 lanes, and that is like really big. when you're in a format that requires a lot of reverses. Currently, we are not in an English format that requires a lot of reverses, so this card shouldn't really see much play. And I'm going to be honest, if you see people playing this at your locals that are regional, and they can't really explain why, it's probably because they're just net decking Japanese lists. And that's fine. You're allowed to net deck whatever you want. I'm not here. I don't care. I do it. I've done it before. They're great they're great guidelines. JP gets sets way before we do the vast majority of the time. I think they got Oshi set 2 like just over a year. I think they got it in February of 2025. That is super common, which means they have tons of time to test things and see how they work and iron out the kinks and stuff like that. So us English players can just hit the ground running. The only thing is, most of the time that's fine. Sometimes you got to keep in mind that maybe they're playing certain cards because they have a lot more sets than we do and that we're unlikely to ever get. And some of those sets just require being played around in different ways. We just have less of a meta that requires reverses, so this card doesn't really matter. However, for our purposes for this deck, it is actually a very good plussing 0. Next up, we are fortunate enough to be able to play this 4 copies of this level 0 Kana. There are 2 Rickies in the set 1 and set 2. We have the I Ricky, that is the on reverse search your deck Ricky from set 1, and then we have the new Aqua Ricky from set 2, which is a more traditional on play clock yourself, search your deck for a level 1 or lower character. Both of those are double rares, and they are expensive double rares at that. This Kana also came out in set 2, however, she is just a rare, and she is on play, pay 1, clock a character from your waiting room, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, add up to 2 characters to your hand. So this is a fantastic way to still have a Ricky effect, a great way to clock yourself during your main phase, which is very, very important. She may not be the most selective because it's really random and you can whiff if you see a climax or an event. And we are playing 4 events, but sometimes it just is what it is. We're making the best with what we got here. And I did consider dropping the event, but I did think statistically, odds are I'm not going to see the event too many times off of the top check from the Kana effect. So it was worth the chance. Sometimes it'll happen, most of the time it won't. You're more likely to see a climax than you are to see a copy of the event, and we're not going to take out climaxes in this deck just so that we don't whiff on this level 0 Kana. She'll still plus you. Sometimes all you need is raw hand size, and that's what this Kana does. She also has a secondary effect where for a cost she is able to move a character from your opponent's backstage to their center stage, which means you can kill brainstorms. You won't use it all the time, and they do need to have an open lane up front. But it is an option, and that's really good. Next, we have this level 0 red Kana. She is just a simple drop salvager. She also has an effect when your opponent plays a climax. You could send her to stock. We've seen this profile a million times before. Still a good card, though. We play it because we don't always have the best selectivity. The level 1 Akane is good, but it only searches the deck. Our brainstorm is not a salvage brainstorm. And the Aqua Rico can salvage level 3s, but it also is unlikely to really salvage level 3s because we don't play that many. So there's a good chance it'll whip a lot if you're trying to grab your level 3, and you'll have to grab something of a lower level. So this is sort of just an easy way to guarantee that you could grab exactly what you need. 1 copy of the Ruby Climax Swapper / Clean Cut from the trial deck. She's from the trial deck, but she's cheap. Even though we're on 8 pants, I do have 1 copy of the Clean Cut just in case. Sometimes you're just not going to trigger your pantses and you need to be able to climax swap. Next, we have 3 copies of the Brainstorm that we looked at in the portion of the deck profile where we discussed Standby. So the first effect is about memory. It doesn't matter. We don't have cards that can go to memory with this list because most of the good ones are double rares. But his second effect is MILF, pay 1, rest itself, MILF 4, and then for every climax, draw 2, ditch 1. It doesn't really have synergy with this list. Unfortunately, though, the Ruby Brainstorm from set 1 and the Kana Brainstorm from set 2 are the only pay 1 self-tap salvage brainstorms in the set. So we kind of just didn't have an option. You can't play the Kana one, the new one, because it only hits on two specific climaxes, which we're not playing here. And the Ruby Brainstorm is an expensive double rare, so we're just sort of stuck playing this one. It's still by Brainstorm standards, by Draw Brainstorm standards, it's not bad. Um, I do like it. I don't think it really works that well in this particular list, but we just need ways to plus sometimes. So it's good enough. We have at the top right the 1-0 Aqua, who is just a refresher and he clock swaps you. We've got the 2-1 Akane towards the top row middle. She's a bouncer. She also digs for a character on play. It looks a top 4. Pretty standard card to include. We got the stock shuffle. We got the Fumio. Lastly, we have 2 copies of the Eye off finisher. I love this Eye very much. I think it's a great off finisher. I think that we're only playing 2 copies because odds are we're not going to have the stock to resolve the Aqua and the Eye. Because if you want to play the Eye, that's an extra 2 stock, and then Encore Step, pay 1, ditch 1. You'll have the hand, but you're not really going to have the stock realistically to do it after you played it out and you played out the Aqua and you use the Aqua. But she's there when you have games where you're sort of high rolling and you do have an extra like 3 stock to spend. At that point, you're getting 3 attacks in, you're getting 3 burn 2s, and then you're getting whatever burn you get off of the Eye. Those are some pretty respectable numbers. So this deck, if you like Aqua and Akane, it just sort of worked out. It's very flavorful that there's a lot of cards with the 2 of them working together. Very flavorful to the show, but it kind of just worked out that some of the better cards, especially in blue, were just Aqua and Akane cards. I think obviously there are weaknesses to this deck, and however, compared to other sets when you try to build budget decks without double rares, I think Oshi's actually in a pretty good position. This is a perfectly competent deck. And if you only want to spend a few bucks, not too much, you're probably spending more on shipping than you are on spending on the actual cards themselves. That's how cheap these cards are. But if you're just getting into Weiss because of Oshi, and you watched the other decks that were discussed in this video, and you started going to TCG Player and looking at prices, and you saw the Ricky from set 1 is $15, $16 now. All the new double rares that are being played, all the super playable ones are in the $10, $15, $20 range even. The level 0 Eye, that was a 4 of in almost every deck we've looked at. She's at 15 to 20 bucks. It keeps fluctuating depending on supply. You don't want to spend that per copy when you need 4 copies of a lot of these cards. Well, now you can, instead of buying the amount you spend on 1 copy, you've got a deck. And it's perfectly competent. The mechanics are simple enough where you'll have all the mechanics you'd get from a regular Weiss deck. You got Brainstorms, you got level 1 combos, level 3 combos. We don't have an early play option. Unfortunately, the only early play healer options were either that weren't double rares, were like in red, but they required memory, which we are not using here, or they were yellow, but we're not playing yellow here, so we couldn't use them. So we don't have any early play heal options, but that's really the only thing that this deck is lacking. And there's no heal option whatsoever. You heal 0. It's impossible to heal in this deck. I just noticed. That's kind of funny. But still, you're not really playing this to be the most competitive. There are definitely ways that you could like fix this up. That would be perfectly fine. There's other zeros you could swap in that are just below double rarity. There's other interesting cards you can use at 1, 2, and 3 that don't have issues with color, but they also are budget friendly. For anyone that wants to explore more, I just encourage you to go to the Weiss Schwarz website. They have a section where you could look at every single card in any given set. I'm not quite sure if you can narrow it down by rarity, but you would be able to check the rarity as you're going through it. The other budget-friendly deck we're going to look at is very similar to what we've already looked at. It is simple. It's got the Eye level 3 combo as well as from the trial deck, as well as the Ruby level 1 combo from the trial deck. We've already talked about these combos before. The only real difference here is that I've taken out all the double rares. As you might have noticed just at a glance, our level 0 lineup is very similar to what it was in the other deck. We were playing a lot of red in the other one, but we're also playing some blue. I still think these are very good cards that apply to this. The colors kind of just worked out. There were some yellows I was thinking about throwing into this one, but at the end of the day, I think this lineup is still pretty good. This one is also super budget friendly. The cards you need from the trial deck are inexpensive, and everything else is inexpensive as well. Plus, when you just like how playing blue at level 1 opened up a lot of doors, and we were able to play multiple different cards, blue 1/0s, that had really good effects and had good synergy. Switching over to 8 door, budget 8 door, it opens up some cool options at level 1. We're able to throw in 3 copies of the 1/0 that searches our Ruby combo. We got the 1 copy of the new I from set 2. That is when it gets reversed. You get to pay 1, ditch 1, send itself to memory. That way you get a little bit of memory compression. You look at top 2 and add a card. She also swings decently big, especially with the climax. We got 2 copies of the 1/0 Aqua. That's on attack. Sack a character, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a character, add to hand. We don't play events in this build, so we don't have to worry about whiffing on events with that effect. But it's very standard. It is very similar to the Idle Eye deck that we did look at already, both of them. And yes, it's not going to perform as well because it is missing the double rares. However, fortunately, Bushiroad has been giving us some very, very competent cards that just aren't double rares. And I think that's a great thing. It hasn't always been like that. Very often in the past, in the earlier days of Weiss, double rares were way more expensive than they are now. And a lot of the time, they really were just like the best effects. And a lot of the other cards in a set might just be outright bad, or their effects might be the equivalent of on attack give something 500 power, which is just kind of trash. However, between this deck and the other budget deck we just looked at, we have so many great options at 0. You still have some utility, you still have some plussing cards, you still have a decent on play Ricky. The colors are not really a problem in this deck. We are mostly just red, but in case you need to play out the Fumio, we do have enough blue to make it work. We still got 5 other blues in this set, and once you get past level 0, you really don't need the level 0 Akane anymore, so you can just level one of them. And we still got a couple all finishers. We still have the 3/2 Aqua D-leveler, because he is not a double rare or higher. So it's good removal. The all finisher, we've got the great 3/2 Ruby from set 2, sack a character at a climax. Again, if you're just looking, I feel like this will probably be the more popular of the two for anyone that is trying out budget stuff, just because it's got I and people like I. And it's probably a bit easier to use this than it is to use the previous budget deck, just because you don't have to worry about how much stock. I mean, yes, it's kind of the same upfront stock cost between the Aqua and if you want to triple this I, but I think for newer players as they're learning, the idea of paying 9, it's even if it doesn't really feel like paying 9, I think just the idea of seeing that pay 9 cost might be a little intimidating to people who really are just trying to figure out if Weiss is for them, based on Oshi. So I think this is just a bit more accessible, even if at the end of the day you still need 7 stock up front to do full combo for either of these two decks. But I think both are perfectly fine. I think there's a lot of value to be playing this Ruby from the trial deck because it has some good support around it, and you can play multiple good cards at level 1 that are red, and red is arguably the best color in Oshi, so you do have options. You do have other options aside from these that aren't double rares, again at all levels, but especially at level 0. And you got some options at 2 as well, and definitely some options at 1 that you could be playing to just try out different stuff. That will be it for all of the decks that we are going to cover today, at least. I do have some ideas for other decks that I would like to talk about at some point. I think what I would like to do is maybe actually make recorded videos of those profiles using real cards. It's very convenient being able to just throw everything on a screen like this, but I know that there's a lot of people out there that like to actually see the cards in person. Maybe it just feels a little more real to them than just seeing things on a screen. So that is something to look out for. For anyone that is, if you're watching this video and you've gotten this far, you're probably just really into Oshi. I hope it's been informative. If you are really into Oshi, just stay tuned because I will be posting some definitely more Oshi content, more deck profiles. I am going to start recording on a trial run matches at my locals. I got permission to do that. And I will definitely be playing Oshi whenever I am doing anything because I'm going to be playing Oshi nonstop for the foreseeable future. I'm going to guess that Oshi will be decently popular at my locals as well, so maybe other people will be playing it. I am going to be doing some video at some point that sort of will discuss specific strategies you can do with various Oshi decks, some of which we've looked at so far, some of which we'll look at a later date. But I hope this has been an informative video. I tried to cover a variety of different types of decks. I try to get the obvious ones out of the way at the beginning, but hopefully it has shown that there are Oshi decks that you could play using different characters, using different triggers and different combos than what pretty much everyone else is going to be playing. I think Oshi has a lot to like between set 1 and set 2. Set 1 had a great foundation, and set 2 really it put in the work to make that foundation actually worth building something upon. Because set 1 was just missing a few key pieces. Oshi 2 more than delivered, gave us so many great things. In addition to new combos, it just absolutely changed the level 0 game. Even when we're not talking about double rares, in the budget section, if anyone noticed, a lot of the zeros that we were talking about, if not most of the zeros that were the budget friendly options in both our decks, were actually from set 2. So whether it's double rares or not, Oshi Volume 2 did a tremendous amount of work in that regard. But I think all of these decks are fun. I think all of them are perfectly playable, especially at a locals level where it's much more casual. There's a lot less pressure. You don't have to pay for like travel and hotel and any of that and feel like you need to do your best. If you're someone that just has a playset of Oshi 1 and 2, there's plenty here in this video I think for you to choose from and just try out different things. And I'm someone who totally plays meta decks and plays meta versions of it with maybe minor changes to add my own like spin to things. But I also very often like to just come up with my own creations and do my own thing and try things that I don't see other people really trying. And I hope that some of the combos we looked at in this video have encouraged and will encourage others to do the same. So that will be it for this video. Thank you to everyone who took the time to watch. I appreciate it. I hope it's been informative. Let me know if there is any sort of deck profile that you want to see with Oshi going forward, and I will do my best to make it happen. Until next time, this has been Catskill Weiss Schwarz. Thank you.